Tuesday, July 24th, and plague is sweeping through the Level 1 studios.
Krista's completely out. I'm dying, but I'm here anyway.
It's playing through the pain like a true champion.
Can you hear? You're not supposed to be able to hear me breathing.
You got that like gravel below everything you say because your lungs are just full of fluids.
I hope it's not pneumonia.
Krista had a flat tire Friday night and then apparently woke up to deathly illness.
I wonder if that was part of the, it was like, it was in the rain and I was like, see her, because she mentioned trying to fiddle with like her spare tire or something, and it's like, it was raining real bad, so it's like, I wonder if that's related.
No, I suspected one of her ancestors did something really bad right around this time. Probably witchcraft related.
It's a curse.
So this week we're going to start off with some good news, and it's kind of good news.
This is one of those things we predicted that. So this is the EFF, and it turns out like things like the National Electric Code, you need to know what the rules are for the National Electric Code because there's like laws and stuff.
Yeah, we had that story about the LexisNexis stuff. That was last year, I think, right?
Yep.
Maybe around this time last year. And there's all these people who just do-gooders. I don't think they benefit financially from it at all, who are going and finding these secret laws and publishing them, and they inevitably get sued. That's what happened here. But the good news is a judge has ruled that, yes, you can post the law because people need to be able to read the law.
Well, if the law says something like, you're going to, incorporated herein is like the Thomas and Bob reference for electric code, and everything that the Thomas and Bob code says is incorporated here into the law for stuff that you have to follow, then the Thomas and Bob thing is not really going to be copyrightable in the same sense that it normally is, because the Thomas and Bob thing has to be known because the law says you have to comply with the thing.
Yeah, that was the same with the LexisNexis thing, where they were putting notes in the laws that were then being interpreted as part of the law.
Whoops.
Which is, that's kind of weird by itself.
That is a little bit.
Should the law firms be able to do that? But whatever, they were, and then they were saying, hey, we've put this in, but we wrote it, so it belongs to us. And the same thing here. Somebody was saying, hey, we wrote this. You can't have it. Well, you can have it if you must comply with it. It's crazy. It's like, hey, here are the rules. Here's how much it's going to cost you to know what the rules are. I mean,
that doesn't seem like it should be legal, and this judge agrees.
That sounds very dictator, third world tyrant-ish. But here we are in the good old US of A. Now, this story, maybe you should sit down for this one. Maybe, if you're drinking something, swallow and put it down so that you don't spit it everywhere, because this is incredible.
The FCC has likely doomed that Sinclair-Tribune merger. Now, we've reported on this before. This is the thing that Ajit Pai basically rubber-stamped. He's changed his mind. Why did he change his mind?
It's crazy because the rule change that he made had to do with the UHF loophole and giving them the ability to gobble up more stations. The rule is like, you can only broadcast, was it like 39% of the audience? Like your news can only be 39% of the audience, because if it's more than that, then everybody is hearing your version of the news. But they did something really, like, it's almost like they're like, well, Pi's got our back. We'll do whatever we want. So they bought some sort of like shell companies, some dummy companies. And they were like, oh yeah, this guy's in charge of the news now, not us. But they owned everything. They owned like the buildings and the equipment. And, they just put some puppet in charge.
We saw that YouTube video where all of these local stations had exactly the same spiel with exactly the same intonation and candor, and it was like somebody made that YouTube video where it was just a grid of like 200 people saying the exact same thing, and it's like, wow, I read about this in Orwell's 1984.
Yeah, so it's not dead, but a judge gets to decide, and I think every time in the past that's happened, the judge has said no.
You think this is just Ajit Pai playing a game of chicken so that he can get a raise and whatever backroom deal he's got?
I don't know. I think he got called out on it, and it was so obvious, and he's under so many investigations, he might actually be worried now.
Well, you should be worried because it's such plain corruption.
Yeah, it's amazing. But you got to think they did invest a lot to get him to change all those rules.
Well, I think it's really funny that our, grandparents and great grandparents that put these laws in place in the first place were apparently so anti-government that they were like, we don't need a system where a few companies can control all of our media outlets. That seems anti-American. And it's taken the better part of 10 or 20 years to tear all that down.
And well, also could be, two steps forward, one step back for them. They're playing the long game. They did get a lot of concessions out of those rule changes. And so then it's like, oh, you beat us in the end. Curse you, and then 2 years from now, they'll do it again. And some more, good news, I guess. Well, back to normal out of some really, really horrific news.
By the time we got to this, the judge had already vacated the order, but through a clerical error, a plea deal with a law enforcement officer was published on the internet. And so the LA Times, a newspaper, published that. And then a judge was like, no, we got to take this down. Here is a super secret seal, injunction, temporary restraining order. Get that stuff down. So the LA Times is like, okay, but we're a newspaper. You can't do that.
The story was about a corrupt cop who had taken bribes, and a lot of his police work was in question because he was dirty. And he had taken a plea deal. He got caught and took a plea deal. I think it was just the details of the plea deal that was the leaked part. So you can almost infer everything else about it. You could kind of guess what it was, but the leak was exactly what the terms of the plea deal was, so they printed that. And for a while there, they had to take it down. They complied, but then this guy got, the phone started ringing, and it was like, oh, just kidding.
Well, it's so this is important though, because think about the contrast between a print newspaper and the internet. It's like with a print newspaper, you're not going to be able to memory hole that. But with the internet, they're like, oh, yeah, the internet's different. Let's try to memory hole that. And that is dangerous thinking.
Of course, they'd also point out that all the archive services already had it. Yeah. So they weren't able to change those. And I suppose it's still dangerous because most people don't know to check that. But yeah, in a print, usually what they do is they'll print a retraction, and the retractions are on the last page in
no one reads those.
8-point font. And yeah, so at least he got caught.
I don't think it would have bothered in this case, knowing that the order was unconstitutional to begin with.
Well, they said they were going to appeal it, and I'm sure they would have won. But how many months would that take? Nobody would remember it.
Yeah, the judge at this point has already vacated it, so there's not even anything to appeal. And that's when it started getting media attention. It was like, wait a minute, this is blatantly unconstitutional.
But I don't understand why we're protecting the details in the first place. Yeah. Why should people not know about what this cop did? I mean, he was clearly corrupt. I don't think anybody's questioning that.
Clearly criminal. It's a special kind of criminal. He's the okay kind of criminal. We're going to give that criminal special treatment.
Speaking of the okay kind of criminal, how about the FBI? Now, of course, we've gone on and on about the FBI's assault on encryption. They want backdoors. They want it now. And they keep insisting that there's a technological way to do this. Somehow there's some magical mathematics or special kinds of electricity that can only give the good guys access. And of course, the industry leaders are always like, you're an idiot. That's not possible. And he's saying, well, without some remedy in that vein, perhaps we need legislation.
The legislation is literally going to be Russia can get in your baby monitor at all times.
Well, I can. And if Russia can because of that, then so be it. Because
that's so dumb.
I have to be able to get in.
Don't believe anybody when they say that there is a reasonable way for encryption. And actually, the article also points out that the FBI was lying through its teeth about the number of phones that it can't get into, because eventually they will be able to get into a phone, even if it's got, just because there's a weakness in the implementation. I
think they added a zero. I think they reported 8,000. It was 800.
Yeah.
So that was a clerical error. Of course it wasn't. That was just like, this number's, it's not very impressive. Let's nudge it up a little bit.
This encryption thing does not stop good police work. And anybody that tells you otherwise is lying. They want it to be easier. They want it to be possible for an idiot mouth breather agent to be able to just push a button and hoover up all the data and then sort out who's guilty later, which is not a danger. That's sort of dangerous for a healthy democracy.
Well, that leads us into our next story. Now, before we talk about this headline, let me walk you through what happened in this story, because it's an incredible turn.
It's a long story.
So you have an FBI agent who is pursuing these two guys who he suspects of dealing drugs. And I think they were dealing drugs, which is unfortunate because you got to ignore that part. You got to say, okay, ignore that there was a crime being committed and look at how they went about catching them.
You want better exactly. You want nuns to have been involved. It's like, oh, we accidentally scooped up some nuns.
Yeah. So he was after these two guys. He found out that one spent time with his girlfriend at her apartment on like Sunday nights or something. He was very regular. So they go there and he was like, I took a task force and we just went to surveil and decided to go knock on the door. Now, when he knocked on the door, incredibly, it just opened up.
Wow, that seems unlikely.
Very unlikely.
That's so lucky.
I mean, if you're dating a drug dealer, wouldn't you be more security focused?
I've seen in TV shows, there's at least 3 or 4 deadbolts and chains on those doors.
So after the door, because normally you wouldn't expect a door just to come open when you knock on it gently, as you would. So he worried about her welfare because something weird might be going on if she had an unlocked door, right?
Oh,
That's
obviously.
Reasonable suspicion.
If the door's not locked, there's going to be a chopped up corpse inside.
So he decided to do a welfare check on this young lady. And in the process of doing so, he discovered a stolen credit cards.
Laying in plain sight.
On the kitchen table.
Obviously.
Which is where you store your stolen credit. I know my stolen credit cards, I keep right next to my keys just so I don't forget them. Pro criminal tip. Store your stolen credit cards out of plain view.
In an opaque envelope signed with sealed with your signature through the seal.
And clearly labeled in large font. Stolen credit. So he also got a hold of a phone. Now he claims while they were, and looking at the phone, not they broke into it, but while they were looking at it, it got a text message or a call from this other gentleman that they were investigating, miraculously. So that they used as evidence that they needed to get this other guy. So that's when they got a warrant to stingray this other guy so they could figure out where he is.
But it turns out the other guy was an agent or something.
No, he was also a drug dealer, I believe. Well,
okay.
Allegedly. But the problem was this was a federal agent. And it was a local task force, a sheriff task force, but this guy was a federal agent. And it turns out the law in whatever state this was, Kansas maybe? I don't remember what state
California,
it was.
I think.
Yeah, that's right, California, because they got those specific laws. The law says a federal agent cannot get a warrant from a local judge, which is exactly what he did.
Oh.
So they stingrayed, they got the guy, and everything is going to court now. And their lawyer was like, he took one look at all this turn of events, and he was like, are you out of your mind? There's so many illegal things you did here. And again, a win for the good guys. The judge agreed.
My favorite thing in this Ars Technica article is that they actually have references to where this type of investigation that has been used before. They have said that we had a confidential informant that told us something, when in fact it was an illegal, warrantless surveillance.
Oh, they talked about that when that first came out. They had a word for it. I don't remember what that word was.
Parallel construction.
Yeah. And
pretty common.
Yeah, that's insanely common. And it also goes to show you, if you really had all of that evidence, and you had the guy's phone number, and you knew where these guys were, somebody was telling you that, do you really need to stingray at that point?
No.
I mean, I think you could work it out.
Yeah.
But
it's like, we have to know. It's like, no, you don't. Come on.
So that could risk the entire case. These guys might walk, and they are probably drug dealers and credit card thieves and so forth, but they'll probably get away with it because lazy Fed.
Woo. Yeah. This is all about all of this stuff that you read about is about lazier law enforcement and not actually trying to do a better job. And it's gonna introduce so many security problems for the rest of us. It's a nightmare.
Now this story, I read it, I tried to read closely, and I still can't figure out, is this a wolf in sheep's clothing, or is this a Republican congressman who's trying to ride ahead of that wave of backlash in the next election cycle because of net neutrality?
The headline is, the GOP congressman introduces a bill to reinstate net neutrality. Now, the Democrats have already been doing that, but this guy's an outlier because he's a Republican, as you were sort of intimating.
Yeah.
So the bill, they're calling this the Open Internet Order, but this bill is less about net neutrality and more about just really, I would say, fairness in advertising. Like, don't call unlimited anything other than unlimited if it's not actually unlimited. Like, if you have a plan that's unlimited but it's not actually unlimited, don't call it unlimited. And you could sell an internet connection like based on speed. Like, I'm going to give you a 6 megabit connection, and how much you can download on a 6 megabit connection is dictated by that 6 megabit connection running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the billing month.
The worrying part here for me, and I don't. So there's like the 4 tenets of net neutrality that they always march out, and the kind of, you remember the fake net neutrality that they tried to push through that was written by the telecoms.
Yeah,
that stripped out the 2 most important ones, which was the fast lanes and I can't remember what the other one was.
Just treating data packets fairly.
It was definitely like throttling based on something. This one puts those back, but oddly, the whole Title II debate, this one creates Title VIII. And it's like, what the hell is Title VIII? And the internet would now be Title VIII, whatever that involves.
That doesn't seem like a good idea.
I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's a good thing, but it's certainly, you know, like the argument from net neutrality people is the utility argument.
Yeah.
And Title VIII would not be that. It would be something else. So.
Yeah, I think that anything that moves us away from the utility argument is a disingenuous argument. We need to separate the data that's delivered from its contents. Otherwise, you get an impossible situation where, like, you know, oh, I see that you're ordering luxury goods from Amazon. That's going to cost you more than the same weight and volume of goods that are like sundry items. That just seems dumb. It's like, we're going to open the contents of your packages and charge you not based on weight or volume, but how much we think you're willing to pay to get your stuff.
So yeah, I'm sure we'll have more stories about that one, and
Yeah.
It bears more research of what the hell is Title VIII, and what does it mean in terms of. They also went through like the massive hurdles this thing would have to jump to become a law, and it's going to be a long time. It has to go through a committee, the same committee that stripped the 2 tenants from the other one.
So we're not going to get anything.
I don't know. That doesn't seem likely. It almost seems like we get a new, like, we're going to restore net neutrality story as every week, just like we get Amazon AWS leaks. It's like the same frequency. So last week we talked about the sewage sniffing robot that detected opioids, and we kind of ended on a cautionary note. It's like, you know, the government could use this. They could put it directly on a house, and they could, you know, it's like, hey, show us your prescriptions, and it could be bad. And how long until we see an example of that?
Once again, the Level 1 news is prescient.
Well, if you're in China, they're already starting.
The robots are linked up directly to your credit monitoring score.
Now, they are, what they're using it for is not necessarily to go after individuals, but they're doing drug enforcement in specific areas, and they're using sewage monitoring to measure how successful it is.
How long, though? It's like, oh, you're a dissident? Oh, guess what we found in your poop?
Or they just begin, you know, those things are probably not too expensive. So just put them everywhere. And then you know where to send the strike teams at any given day. Yeah. So a little scary, and certainly something that I can see the DEA being like, oh,
that sounds like a good idea.
I like that. Let's do that. Let's get some robots. So yeah, as we said last week, pro criminal tip, if you're abusing opioids, you're going to have to start using the litter box and just put it in your garbage can.
You know, there was a local guy that he was dismissed from his job at the local university, I think, because he had poppy seed bagels. And one of those quickie drug tests was like, wow, you are like opioided out of your mind. And it was like, no, he just eats poppy seed bagels from the local bakery every morning.
There was I think it was Seinfeld had an episode about that. But they have proven that
big cash settlement. He doesn't work anymore.
So if you have a government job and they drug test, just go hard on the poppy seed bagels and keep your receipts. And speaking of colleges, wow, we didn't even plan that. How about, again with China, the old social credit system? You think, well, how bad can it be? What can they do to me if I've got bad social credit? Well, we found out can't get on a plane, can't get on a bus, can't get loans, things like that.
Your kids can't go to college.
Yeah, this is the sins of the father. or in this case, the debt of the father.
We have episodes of Star Trek about this, warning us that this is wrong.
So he owed like $30,000, I think, in dollars, and
That the father owed to a bank.
but it's an important distinction. They ruled that he had the money.
Yeah.
So it's a different, if you owe it and you don't have it, then you don't get hit as hard on the social credit as if you owe it and they think you have it. That's a huge tanking of your credit score.
At the same time, according to this story, the father has started to make arrangements to pay back the thing when he learned that his son's admission to the school was in danger.
Which sadly, I think that reinforces it.
Yeah.
So they're going to be like, oh, that works. Let's do more of that.
Yeah, literally, like a year or two from now, there's going to be some congressperson in your local government or some local government official in wherever your local government is that's like, man, China's doing this social credit thing with technology. We got to bring that here because look at these positive effects.
You know, I think maybe the one thing that'll save us from that is that politicians are almost usually rich, almost always rich, I mean, and rich people are notoriously heavy in debt because they know how to play the rates. So maybe we'll be spared because of that. Money will still control politics, but at least we won't have the social blacklist. Uber, this is it's a news story, but it's not really. It's July 16th.
It's been a long time since we covered Uber.
But they were already embroiled in this whole gender thing. Although I think the one before was hiring practices.
Yeah. Well,
and this one is just like, harassment.
I think after their CEO left, we made some predictions because didn't they go out of their way to do like the gender equality thing after this?
They did. But I'm not sure if I think this happened after that. But the explanation here is this woman was like, this guy propositions me for sex every day. And I turn him down and I make it clear that I'm not comfortable with that. He
just office banter. Why is this a big deal?
But he was apparently an incredible manager. He got the most out of all of his people. So they loved him and they wouldn't fire him. So she's suing and we'll probably win quite a settlement. If they're smart, they'll settle that, get it right out of the news. Because Uber is plagued with lawsuits at all times. Now, Egypt is that's one of the countries we talk about regularly. They've got some draconian rules, and when it comes to online, they err on the side of caution, you might say.
This is also a microcosm. Like we're talking about like the whole fake news thing, and it's like, who decides what's fake news and blah blah blah. And you guys playing the home game may say, on the surface that sounds really well. Well, you should pay attention to what Egypt is doing for an example of how wrong that can go.
Yeah, so Egypt actually registers websites that are going to be news sites. Like you have to register with the government and pay a licensing fee and do all that business.
You can't just say stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so blogging is like a fine line. Like who decides when a blog becomes a news source? Well, in terms of social media, Egypt has drawn the line. It's 5,000 followers. If you have 5,000 Twitter followers, for example, you are a news source, and you better not get caught with what they could consider fake news.
Not towing the line with the state, whatever. Yeah. This article has some examples of the fake news, and like Egypt is just off the rails because it's not. Yeah. It's real bad in terms of like a humanitarian situation.
Basically, any sort of talking about the government in any light at all that is negative is fake news in Egypt. So a lot of Twitter activists are going to be in trouble over there, I think. I wonder, what if you just every day you trimmed you blocked people till you got down to 4999?
They'd probably haul you off anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Well, last week, the big story was the EU, and was it last week or the week before? But it was like they were threatening.
Yeah, well, it was decided they were going to do it, but they hadn't figured out a monetary figure for the EU to fund Google, and it's now $5 billion.
I think they were floating $5 billion, but they hadn't. It was not confirmed. The paperwork, the ink wasn't dry, I guess, basically. But this week we find out the next big story, which is they've done it, and it's $5 billion.
Now, this is from Reuters, and basically what the EU is saying is that Apple and Google are different because Apple makes its own hardware, and Google doesn't make its own hardware. Google makes people that want to use Android on their phones follow a bunch of rules, and the EU has a problem with that. But it's actually like both the EU and Google are being very disingenuous about what it is they're doing, or the players involved don't actually understand the nuances of everything that they're trying to do.
Yeah, the Apple argument doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, another argument that they sort of float out there, which shouldn't matter at all, is the market share.
Yeah.
And Apple just doesn't have enough of the market share for them to consider going after, I guess. I don't know. But
so, like, there is okay, let's look at Samsung. Like, Samsung has a history of bundling awful crapware garbage applications on their phones that you can't uninstall or remove or do anything with. And it's also sort of problematic to get updates for a lot of these phones. Like, the Android security updates and things like that are often languishing behind for carriers. And so, like, the EU regulators say that they don't really want to mess with that, but they think that carriers should be able to customize their phone and do some other stuff if they want. But as a consumer, I don't want that, because I don't trust Samsung to not screw up my phone. But at the same time, if you want to run the open source components of Android, like I want to roll my own Android operating system and be able to do stuff with, the apps, I can't do that. Google makes it super hard to do that. So in that respect, the EU is right. But in the Samsung situation, where Samsung is wanting to take Android and customize it to be evil, I think the EU is wrong.
Another part of it was the search. Because Google, when you get an Android phone, there's this whole array of Google products that are integral with the Google phone.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man, that's added value in a lot of ways.
We'll put it another way. What if you had to use Bixby search and there was no option because it's a Samsung phone? I mean, what the EU is saying with their Apple argument is that's fine. And some people in the EU that are pushing for this law have said, oh, no, we don't mean it that way. They just need to clarify. But there are other people in the EU that are saying, no, that's fine because that's just Samsung doing its own customization. But it's like, no, I don't. As a consumer, I want to pick. I want to choose what my search provider is. And I can't do that with Android exactly. I mean, I can kind of install some apps. But I also don't want Samsung to make that choice for me because they're garbage.
A lot of people are predicting that this will be, because you've got those really low-priced Android phones. Mm-hmm. And newsflash, the reason you're getting those low-priced Android phones is because Google you're using that suite of Google services almost always when you get those, and they're harvesting your data and they're selling it. They're making money on the back end.
Well, if you take what the EU is saying completely face value, then Facebook could make the Facebook Android phone that does exactly what Google is doing and is horribly abusive from a user perspective. But that would be okay because it would be low cost and Facebook harvesting the data instead of Google. It seems crazy.
But the point is, those phones are going to go away.
Yeah.
Because if Google can't harvest the data and make money that way, then you might see all those Google handsets going the Apple way of like over $1,000 a piece. Because they're going to have to try to make money on the actual hardware, which they don't care as much about because it's obviously not their business model.
It's a mess.
It's going to be interesting. I wonder if we're going to get EU-specific Android.
Oh, yeah. I would say we will.
And there's going to be... What do you think is going to happen when you get caught with a U.S. Android in Google or in the EU?
I think Windows M... the Windows without the bundled media player, that's how they dealt with that in Europe. I think Google's going to... If Google were smart, they would just go ahead and do that. But at the same time, Google is trying to stop the whole open source thing from catching on. And I think that's really what the EU should focus on, is like, if you want to run an open source Android, but still use some of the Google apps, Google would be compelled by law to like not make that situation difficult. Because they make that situation super difficult right now with the open source Androids.
I remember when I was a young man, moving to the next story, and right after I didn't really care about politics when I was in high school. I don't think most people do. But then I got into college, and we got Bush, and I was like, wow, Bush he's kind of weird. And then 9/11 happened, and it was like, whoa.
I didn't care about politics until they were like, we can have backdoor encryption, and it's like, I don't think you understand how that works.
Well, 9/11, it was like, what? Your freedoms don't matter. Because scary things might happen. It was like, oh, yeah. And then Bush 2, I remember that election. And I remember being so crestfallen when he won. And I was like, really? Really? Because it seems like everybody in the world was against him. How did he win? well, maybe we have a little window into that in this next story.
Motherboard says that this top voting machine vendor admits that it installed remote access. It's apparently PC Anywhere. It's Symantec PC Anywhere. Is that even still a thing?
No, well, they had to get rid of it after this was discovered.
That's crazy. Why would you even? It's like I need to log in to remotely access the voting machine.
So the time frame of this was right before and during the 2006 election. There were voting machines that were inexplicably plugged in during the election. They had modems. They had to install modems because why would there be a modem in a voting machine? And so some of them had modems and PC Anywhere during the election, which is now these were not the machines where you go and cast your vote. These were like the top level machines
that count from the other machines.
So they're connected to the other machines, and they report the ultimate vote back to.
Well, if you wanted to rig an election, that would be where you would need
exactly because it doesn't matter how the people vote. You report a different number.
Neat.
If you had unfettered access for some reason to the top level. And they did mention that they only did it for a handful of, they didn't say how many, but a small amount. But when you look at the electoral map, you only need, maybe 5 or 6 to swing an election that was that close.
Huh.
So yeah, they've admitted to that now. For a long time, they wouldn't admit to it. That was from Motherboard, and every time it was like, we reached out to this company that built these voting machines, and they did not return our they did not comment on our questions. So I think they knew what they were doing, and it's so depressing. They claim that in the later elections this was not the case, but that's just one company, and it wasn't Diebold or Diebold or whatever it is. It was another company.
Well, the technology is such that we should be able to audit in a way that we've never been able to audit before, which should assure the integrity. So, you think that they would maintain records from the individual machines so they could compare individual machines with like the aggregators. No records are maintained.
Well, there was that story out of Florida where they insisted the records be destroyed.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you do that? There's no explanation that makes any kind of sense. But yeah, there we go. This is a weird one. I don't think this is good news. We talked about, I don't remember if we've ever done a story about this. This might have been too long ago. Level 1 news might not have existed during that time. But the original story here is because of this photo right here. This is Tom Brady. A blogger or just, like a civilian type guy shot this picture and uploaded it to Twitter or Instagram or something like that. And it was used in a lot of publications because there was a big story about Tom Brady and everybody was just like, oh, that's a good picture. Let me take it and use it. And so this guy sued him. And it shook out weirdly, and they thought it was going to be appealed, but now the appeals court's like, no, we're not. We're not looking at that.
But the alarming thing is that embedding and linking media is even more ambiguous than it was before in terms of like what's fair use and what would be actionable in terms of like a lawsuit.
Yeah, the question here was, before the rule was, if you're hot linking it, if it's on my server and you're simply linking to it, then you're serving my content and that's okay. But if you steal it, put it on your server, then that would be you taking my content.
That seems okay.
But they refuse to consider that because all these big major publications did just that. They took the image and cropped it and did whatever with it and posted it on their own server. They would have all been guilty of that. So this judge ruled in their favor and expected the appeals court to deal with it. The appeals court says, no, not us. We're not doing it.
Not it.
Yeah, exactly. This one, I'm on the fence here.
The Senate wants an emergency alert to go through Netflix, Spotify, etc. I don't think this is necessary because it could just show up on people's phones.
Well, they mentioned that. Yeah, my phone, I can actually turn those off, and I have.
Yeah,
because
me too.
I don't care. Now, the problem with the emergency alerts, they test it too often. It's very annoying.
The new versions of Android have the option to turn off only tests or tests and real ones.
The other thing is, I'm not sure if these are included, but like you got the Amber alerts, and then you got those. Is it the Silver alert?
I don't care about lost children.
Don't care. No, I mean, I feel for you if you lost your kid, but
or grandma.
What am I going to do about it? I'm gonna go and like peek through the blinds, like, no, don't see them, and then what? So yeah, this is a new FCC endeavor. I think they're trying to get back in people's good graces after all those fake alerts.
No.
But TechCrunch brings that up. It's like, you're going to interrupt my Netflix binge with a bunch of fake alerts now? It's like, no, shouldn't have that. But on the other hand, you know, if you save Grandpa, is it worth people being mildly disrupted? It's better than regular TV because you can go back. You're not going to miss anything.
I don't think that somebody sitting watching Netflix is going to be particularly useful for an Amber Alert or a blue alert anyway.
Yeah.
Silver Alert, whatever it is.
Yeah, maybe. You got to wonder what that's going to cost.
Yeah. Because Netflix has to implement the protocol
and they probably have to give them some kind of subsidy to. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't make them eat the cost of that. And plus, all the new online services that keep popping up. When do you decide that an online service has to join the emergency alert network?
Oh, well, immediately, obviously, because otherwise they're not allowed.
I suppose. And speaking of the FCC, we all know that T-Mobile and Sprint are desperate to merge. How do you feel about that? Well, you can tell the FCC.
You can post some terrible, terrible comments on the internet. Just don't steal anybody's identity to do it.
Yeah, they've opened up that famous comment system, and you can tell them what you think about T-Mobile and Sprint merging for the next, you got till August 27th, so about a month.
This comment is just the letter R followed by 300 E's.
That'd be great if they had a text-to-speech engine reading it to them.
In the FCC lobby, it's like, what is that sound? It's like, oh, don't worry about that.
Well, we've all experienced bots. Sometimes they're a force of good, sometimes they're a force of evil. But sometimes you don't even know they're bots. Maybe that's when they're the most dangerous.
This lawmaker is so pissed off because bots kept telling him terrible things on Twitter. It's like, I want bots to force them to identify themselves.
Well, this was a bail. Okay, so this guy wanted bail reform. I think he was in California, yeah. And I don't know what he was trying to do. I don't know if it seemed like he was making it less good for the bail bondsman. Like he wanted to, which was probably going to be good for the people being arrested.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to say that for sure because I didn't read what he was trying to do. But he was trying to pass some legislation that had to do with changing the way bail works. And the bail people of one of the other politicians was an ex-bail guy and still had the company, had an army of Twitter bots assault him on Twitter. And no matter what he would tweet, they would post links and like try to debunk it, but they were all bots. So he's saying he wants bots to be forced to identify themselves as bots whenever they're used.
Yeah, doesn't seem like that would work.
No, I don't see how. And already the bill has been sort of like twisted and detoothed, and at this point it's just if it has to do with trying to convince you to buy something or to try to convince you to do something politically are the only two reasons you would have to reveal that you're a bot.
It'd be a lot like putting a disclaimer on an ad. It's like, this ad for political action was paid for by Putin. Doesn't seem like that would work.
Yeah, Facebook's kind of doing that, I guess. And they also point out that where is the line between I have a political opinion and I'm trying to convince you to vote a certain way? Because elections are so topic based these days. There's like one or 2 points where one is going one way and one's going the other. And if you say I'm pro-abortion, then you're pretty much taking a political side in the eyes of a lot of people. So how's a bot supposed to know where the line is?
Julian Assange is going to be evicted from Ecuador's embassy. And he's like, there's been some political changes in Ecuador, I guess, and they're not.
President.
Yeah, so the new president doesn't really like Julian Assange. He's going to be handed over to UK authorities, supposedly.
It seems like it's a done deal. They're just not sure when. He has done several things that angered them. He's even leaked some stuff about Ecuador, which is like, bro, I respect your wanting to get the truth out, but you got to think about your own situation. If he goes, if the UK gets him, for sure they're going to extradite him, and he's going to come here and face treason, I guess.
This whole thing just doesn't. They're not really like super transparent about what's going on. Because as it stands right now, the UK police want him for evading the Swedish warrant, which has been dropped.
Yeah, that case completely fell apart.
So, well, that case shouldn't really probably have existed in the first place.
No, that was totally fake.
But, what is the UK going to do? Because he can't be extradited to Sweden because in an extradition order, you're only allowed to extradite for the thing on the thing. You can't add more later. So he's not going to be extradited. So has he been charged with something in the UK that hasn't been identified?
No,
yet?
he's been charged here with, was he a U.S. citizen?
No. So
it can't be treason. It's got to be something else.
He's being Kim.com'd.
Essentially, yeah. But I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. But I think that they should at least be like, when you're turned over to the UK, this is what's going to happen to you. The fact that they're not doing that shakes my confidence in the system because it's a little too cloak and dagger.
Well, the other smoking gun about him being extradited here is that word on the street is one of the pieces of leverage that's being used is the U.S. is blocking an IMF loan to Ecuador.
Yeah.
Because they're keeping him.
See, that kind of stuff is crazy. Why are we doing that behind closed doors in this day and age? We have the internet. Politicians cannot keep that shit secret.
Well, he doesn't have the internet anymore because they've already taken away all of his communication, and they use mobile jammers. If you work in the Ecuador embassy, how annoying is it that your mobiles are jammed 24 hours a day?
Because of Assange, wow.
Yeah. So they're probably not voting for him. Yeah. Now, this is good news. Oh, speaking of, doing it in secret, do you think that trial will be public?
No.
If he comes here?
No, I think he's going to disappear, and it's going to be like, we don't know what happened to him.
He's going to be in Gitmo. He's going to be getting real close with a certain waterboard.
And that makes me sad for modern, we have the technology to do this in the open, transparently. If we're going to run a gulag, let's at least be open and honest about it. Let's learn from China's example.
I think by definition, you can't be open and honest about a gulag.
China's doing fine. China's
well, now they disappear, the bloggers and stuff like that. We don't know where they go.
They're still, even those disappearances, they're more open about those disappearances than the West.
Now, I've got amazing news. Let's say that you are a modeler. You create 3D models and skin them. If you're really good at spiders, if you make incredible spiders, then you're going to have a lot of work in the near future. Because VR is being used to cure phobias.
Virtual reality cured my fear of heights. I read this and it's like, okay, that's cool. It's basically exposure therapy. So exposing somebody to the thing they're afraid of makes them less afraid. And I don't I don't particularly care for people, but this YouTube thing has sort of helped me overcome some things. So I guess that's good.
Now, this is the VR environment here. So you go through a series of escalating things. First of all, you walk up some stairs that are overlooking these balconies here, and you drop items off of the balcony. And then there's another step up where you're forced to go out onto a ledge to rescue a cat, which, that gives you some interaction. And then ultimately, you see this guy down here, this whale. You got to ride this whale as he goes further and further higher around the building, which prepares you for the real world scenario of riding whales, flying whales.
Exposure therapy it works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for some people, and that is,
that is a good way. I think they claim 70% of the people, not 70% improvement, but 70% of the participants had a 24-point improvement. So
makes sense. You do it over and over again, you get more comfortable with it. It turns out I still hate people, but I can tolerate it. It's fine.
Maybe you can, they'll do a VR crowd, and you can mill among them. Yeah. But like I said, if you're really good at spiders, start cranking out spiders, because we're going to need terrifying, because that's one of the most common phobias. And you're going to have a VR spider immersion game.
I think people that are super into scary movies is experience the dismemberment through the VR, and it's this movie's great. It's
Well, I think running in fear games would definitely be improved by VR, because you look around easier, you can peek, that kind of thing. So definitely be. So now we've gotten into we've gone into hardware. That was VR hardware, in case you didn't notice. But now we want to talk about 3D printing and a huge 3D printing milestone. And this is pretty impressive because it's titanium.
Yeah, I want this printer. This is crazy. It's 4 feet in diameter and made out of titanium.
Yeah, this is a cap for the end of a fuel canister. So you can imagine this is dealing with some pretty extreme pressures, probably some heat going in there, and they just are able to 3D print these things. Now, the amazing savings here isn't just the time you save by 3D printing, but if we look at this thing, normally I imagine it's hollow on the inside.
Yeah.
Normally, you would cast a 4x4 block of titanium and mill everything out.
Yeah.
So it's 80% waste, basically. You could probably recycle the shavings, but still, that's time consuming, and they can just print this in half the time, don't have the waste. This is incredible.
Level 1 3D titanium printer win.
And what do you think one of those costs?
Millions of dollars.
You think more than $1 million, you think?
Oh, yeah.
And I imagine liquefying the titanium, it probably doesn't come with it. That's probably an add-on.
There's probably some kind of powder. The machine there's a Canadian company that was printing from like Inconel, and it was some kind of a powder, and it used like laser sintering to do its thing. So it's probably similar. It's probably a titanium powder. That's really good from a recycling standpoint, though. Like, if you have a production facility that's milling traditional titanium stuff, and then you take the shavings and turn it into a powder, and then feed that to the 3D printing machine, that would be like 0% waste.
I wonder if the powder has any other properties, though. I don't know. That'd be an interesting thing to learn about. Not that you could ever apply it outside of these.
Oh, I'm sure we'll have people in the comments telling us all about it.
But most of them won't have any experience with it.
No. If you want to invite Level 1 to come to your 3D printing facility that uses a titanium printing, you can post. Everybody else, not so much.
But we want to be able to 3D print titanium things and bring them home.
Yeah. We've got some ideas.
So it's a Ramvolution. How about LPDDR5? There's an acronym. That's a long one.
It's got to be so embarrassing for Intel. It's like Samsung's like, we're making 10 nanometer RAM. How's your processors doing, Intel? And Intel's like, well, we're still poking along 14 nanometer.
And low power DDR5. Is this? I mean, I don't understand the timing here. Is this going to be before regular DDR5? Because
yeah, I think this is probably going to go into like phones and maybe graphics card. Well, it's not graphics card. Maybe low end graphics cards, but we might see modules like this that are otherwise available on sort of like the next gen stuff. But embedded systems are probably going to get this first.
Yeah, they talk, and this has 2 power modes. It's got like the extremely low power one, and then the just low power one. So you can use it not just in your high powered phones, but in your really low end phones.
Yeah.
And they haven't actually started, the foundries aren't actually cranking it out yet, but they claim they're close enough, and they're going to start in 2019.
The yields are high enough, which is the important thing, which really says a lot about Intel's process, because I mean, this 10 nanometer is not the same as Intel's 10 nanometer, but every Tom, Dick, and Harry can do lithography at less than 14 nanometers, and poor little Intel, Intel's got a couple of things at 10 nanometers, but it just doesn't seem like they've got the yields high enough for it to make sense.
Well, last week we talked about Amazon and their possible white box networking switches and how destructive that would be for Juniper and Cisco.
Let me walk you through what happened there. A Cisco executive called the people at Amazon just in an abject panic, out of breath, can't breathe, cold sweats. I mean, he was like standing on the ledge of the building, and it was like, tell me this isn't true. And the Amazon people said, no, we're not making a commercial networking switch. We're just making a switch for our own internal use.
Which one could see how A could lead to B rapidly.
Yeah, probably what will happen is Amazon is not going to make this switch, but some company in China is going to be like, oh.
Zamazon, a new Chinese company, is going to get into the networking.
Yeah, Cisco, like, honestly, the story here is not the non-story. It is how much Cisco freaked out because their stock price went crazy. And like Cisco put out a lot of PR around this to be like, no, correction. And Cisco does work with Amazon a whole bunch. And so Amazon did sort of do them a favor here. But at the same time, Cisco's business model has got to change because there's not a lot of money to be made in custom switches when you can do everything in software now, and they don't even really understand what their customers want anymore.
Well, balloons. You thought they were for birthday parties, perhaps storing heroin in your body cavity? Yeah? You thought their uses were limited? But no. They will bring you the internet.
You can only be talking about Loon. Now, we've talked about Loon before. It's Google's crazy, like, internet by balloon. But it's in Kenya now.
This one seems like semi-inflated.
That's how it is with weather balloons, I guess.
The one they show down here in the article is much larger. Oh, the images aren't loading in. Oh, there we go, yeah. So, I don't know what's up with that. Maybe that was just a test. But anyway, this is going to be over Africa. These guys are going to be floating around carrying wireless data hardware and bringing the internet to rural Africa. There's no mention of what it's going to cost, and they will for sure be a monopoly because by definition, no one else has internet balloons in Africa. So
the most impressive use of this technology I've seen has been in disaster recovery scenarios, like a tornado comes through and rips up all the infrastructure and internet and stuff. And Google's just like, it's cool, we got this. And they show up with a tractor trailer of those. And
they used them in Haiti, didn't they? Or not?
In Puerto Rico.
Yeah, Puerto Rico is what I'm thinking of. They used these to get the internet back on. That's cool. Yeah. I wonder what it's polyethylene that they're made out of. I wonder what the life cycle of a polyethylene.
Going straight into the ocean.
But I mean, how long will it float before something terrible happens?
Weeks. Months, maybe.
I guess you make enough money.
I think they tether them, though. I don't think that they're totally...
they talk about the unit has... it monitors wind patterns. And they're mobile. Like they roam. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. If you tethered them, I think you'd invite the possibility of people messing with them.
Oh, yeah, I guess if it's not tethered at a secured site. I think some of the ones in Puerto Rico might have been tethered, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
I mean, can't you see you're in rural Africa and somebody just, drives the winch truck up to the tether, winches it down and takes it?
Yeah. Well, we did learn about that a few weeks ago where it's like they had the GPS tracker on whatever rare bird that was, and somebody was like, oh my gosh, this has a SIM card. I'm just going to pop this in my phone. Oh, free data. Woo.
Well, if you're hardcore into fitness, you've probably got a Fitbit or what's the hot new one? Do they have a new one these days? I don't know. But anyway,
Apple Watch. I don't know.
People wear these things, and it tells you if you're fit or not, and how much in a given day are you doing enough stuff. But they're not really super accurate. They have a lot of gaps. Well, now we have a new revolution in these things because we're going to track your fitness via your sweat.
Stanford is going to track cortisol levels out of your sweat because that apparently is linked to how stressed you are. I would get one, but it would go off at annoying times.
Now, here's my worry about this. Because the stress hormone, when you're working out, you're stressing your body. But cortisol, if you're just like, mental stress will do that too.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be really bad. So how long before police interrogations pop one of these on you?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, he was stressed when we were asking him about that lost elderly person. And it's like, guys, I was only stressed because I turned off the silver alerts on my TV.
Or the chairs in the interrogation room, like the arms of the chairs will just have these built in.
Oh, yeah.
So you put your arm on the chair and it's like, oh, I see. Mr. Stress, what are you stressed about? And that could go really bad. This page is pre-scrolled and I don't know why. Oh, this was a kind of a hot story this week, and I think this is a combination of two Venn diagrams of haters, which I'm a part of one of them. It's the Apple haters and the AMD fanboys.
Business Insider's talking about Apple fans are returning their new MacBook Pros that cost a minimum of $2,800 because they can't reach the advertised specs. This is like the debate between the new i7 and the i9 MacBook Pros. And it's a little bit of column A and it's a little bit of column B. So it turns out that the thermal design in the new MacBook Pros is garbage, is unmitigated garbage. And the i9 will get hotter faster than the i7, and both the i7 and the i9 will throttle. depending on what your workload is, like how bursty it is, like it's going to be really busy and then the CPU is going to be idle and it's going to be really busy. The i9 might start to throttle quicker, but in general, the i9 is still going to be a little bit faster. Well, the i9 at its fastest is in a freezer because
this, on the back of the was it 32 or 38 core at Computex? Where they were freezing it.
Yeah, with the 1 horsepower chiller.
I think it was 38 cores. Anyway, this is sort of that same thing where it's like, look at the i9 and how incredibly powerful it is. And it's like, cores. Oh, yeah, it's incredibly powerful, but you can't cool it.
Yeah, no.
So
I think the real story here that everybody has missed is that I would bet that the Apple thermal solution was designed for a 10 nanometer CPU, but Intel has given them a 14 nanometer CPU. So it's putting out, these thermal problems are not new, first of all. They've been around since time immemorial. And these new CPUs are 6 cores instead of 4, and there are other bigger, heavier laptops that have better cooling and they'll work fine. If I were going to buy one of these laptops, I would not buy the i9, having looked at the data. But there are some people that have said the i9 is still faster than the i7 for some workloads, and that is not untrue. But bottom line, if Apple is going to say these are like super high-end devices, and it's like, the pinnacle of the computing experience, the thermal solution here should not be this terrible.
Well, what's the price difference?
Like $400.
Yeah, you're paying $400, and you're not necessarily getting $400 worth of performance because it's never going to run at the hypothetical performance that they might show.
Best case scenario on tasks that take like 30 minutes to do, I'm thinking like rendering video and that sort of thing, you're looking at a difference of like 2 to 4 minutes typically on a 30-minute task for $400 more expensive. It's like,
Plus, probably cranking out a lot more heat.
Both of them actually will be hot enough to cook food.
Well, maybe you could, multitask.
The i7 versus the i9. It's like, I'm making breakfast while rendering my video.
Which one will cook an egg faster? There's a video. And speaking of Apple, last week we talked about the much maligned, actually for a couple weeks we've been talking about the much maligned Apple keyboard. And we found out that in the new one they've added a membrane that's supposedly going to deal with that. Well, iFixit, I believe, did a teardown and to try to estimate, does this really fix the dust problem? And the answer is maybe a little.
It's the more interesting story here, I think, is that publicly Apple has said the membrane is to make it quieter, but somebody leaked an internal memo, and the internal memo totally says we're hoping that this helps with the dust problem. So I think that Apple doesn't want to say anything about the dust problem with the new keyboard because they're not planning to put the membrane keyboard in the old laptops.
Oh, they've confirmed they will not. If you go in for the fix, you will not get a new keyboard.
Yeah. So I think that's just Apple trying to avoid the hundreds of millions of dollars potentially of everybody coming back with like the, MacBooks of the last, any MacBook with the butterfly keyboard coming back and saying, I need a new MacBook or a retrofit of the new keyboard on this MacBook. Which is why Apple is saying, it just makes it quieter. It doesn't actually make it fix the dust problem, which is really evil of Apple.
And iFixit did point out that because, the key has to get to the switch, there's always going to be some window for dust. Yeah. It's probably going to last longer, but once it gets in there, the same thing's going to happen. So,
well, that's it for this low-energy episode of the news. I'm going to have some caffeine. We're going to try again in episode 2.
See you on Wednesday. It's Wednesday, July 25th. In case you didn't watch yesterday, the plague sweeping through our offices. Wendell's on his 6th or 7th strawberry candy.
Oh, yeah. Sorry for the noise.
So, thankfully, Zerial Straws sent us a 5-pound bag of strawberry candies as a joke for our Twitch anniversary.
Oh, my God. I didn't get sick until I started eating the candy that the Twitch streaming...
Well, I ate the candy too, though.
Okay.
And Krista didn't.
Well, I do have a polonium sensitivity, so maybe...
Halva. What did you think about the halva? It was weird, wasn't it?
It was weird. It wasn't bad, though.
It was dry.
I would probably eat it on toast for breakfast.
It was like sugary sand. I don't think you could spread it.
You don't think? I think I could probably get it on toast. It was like extra dry toast.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and make an admission here. I get such a sense of glee
I think anybody that watches the Level 1 news would know that.
When it comes to crushing the dreams of the EV fanboys. And boy, are they vocal. They've got a lot to say. So I front-loaded the Tesla stories. I'll admit it. So maybe bad news. Tesla will be the first automaker to lose the federal tax credit.
There have been a lot of comments on this that is misinformation in our story.
Right. The first one is, it is not when you do the paperwork. It is when you take delivery of the vehicle.
According to the IRS.
So the Obama rules said you can get the full credit for 200,000 cars. Turns out Tesla has already at least, done the paperwork for its 200,000th car. So they're going to start tapering off into 2019.
Well, you have to take delivery. The law has kicked in. So as long as you take delivery of your Tesla by December 31st, 2018, you get the full tax credit. But if Tesla can't give you your car before then, you don't take delivery of it, it's a problem.
That's right. And
at least according to everything that we've read online.
When it comes to the $35,000 Model 3, not likely. Not likely you're going to get that this year. So you're going to miss out on the $75,000 tax credit.
Well,
or $7,500.
Musk is still saying that they're exponentially going to increase production, but he's been saying that for a long time.
The big, I didn't include it because it does seem like a non-story, but the big thing this week was did you see the drone footage of the parking lot? There's a parking lot of just a sea of Teslas somewhere that they found. And Tesla responded and said that's just part of our fulfillment supply chain. But a lot of people are like, well, if people are waiting for them, why are they sitting in this parking lot? So, but that might be true. I mean,
they must all have some sort of terrible problem.
Though that's the short sellers are being like, yeah, it's because these are, what do they call that? It was like factory something.
Did not see that. This is one of the Fallout video games. So there was this quest in one of the Fallout video games where you had to go from Mr. House to the robot factory, and then you activated all the robots. Maybe it's like that. The parking lot of all the Teslas. You need the poker chip or something to go activate all the Teslas.
I don't think that would be good. It's combat vehicles. Maybe. I don't know. Well, more bad news for Tesla. And this is not coming from me. This is coming from JP Morgan.
Tesla shares are going to plunge more than 40% before the end of the year. I don't know. JP Morgan also predicted Bitcoin and whatever. Maybe I trust them so little after that silver debacle that it makes me want to go buy Tesla shares.
Well, forget silver debacle. How about the housing debacle? They were a big part of that.
The housing debacle was not super complicated, but it is sort of complicated. But with the silver thing, they were literally don't do this with silver. But then they themselves were doing exactly what they told people not to do with silver, which is
hoarding,
so duplicitous.
Hoarding the physical metal while destroying the paper price.
You want to buy the certificates. You don't need the metal. You want the metal.
You're right that, I'm no huge fan of Tesla, but I'm way less of a fan of JP Morgan. So I'm not sure how to take this one. But they're saying that because of the money burn and because of the, losing the rebate and all these different factors, they're saying that Tesla's going to hit a wall. And one of the big parts of it is, and I kind of agree with this one, Tesla has been without a competitor for a very long time. And now we're seeing other electric vehicles that are going to start coming onto the market in 2019.
I have seen a lot of very impressive stuff from Tesla in terms of their battery technology. So the competitors may not really be there in terms of the battery technology. But I don't think that Tesla has been adding innovation elsewhere in their vehicles. So I think their competition is catching up as much as anything.
And those people already know how to make cars.
Yeah.
So you might get a nicer car from them. But who knows? We do not, disclaimer, don't make any trades based on information that you get from the Level 1 News.
Because we don't know what the hell we're talking about. I'll tell you that right now.
But I am not a short. I do not hold any Tesla positions. You have to always disclose if you do news about it.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't have any Tesla stock either. So,
well, Germany is not waiting to take away your rebate. They're saying not only is there going to be no rebate,
you got to pay it back.
You got to give your money back.
I did not read this in my twice warmed over yesterday's gravy state.
It's not black and white. And Tesla has responded, but who do you trust? So here's the deal. Germany had this deal where you could get this money back, but it had to be for a non-luxury version of an electric vehicle. Right? I guess the thought process is, if you're buying a $60,000 car, you don't need a tax rebate, right?
Seems reasonable.
So Tesla said, oh, don't worry. We've got this one version of the Model S that's like this base price. It totally adheres to this thing. But then they would sort of like sell the customer the car, and then they were like, okay, now that transaction's done, do you want to add on all these features that every car needs, you know? And they didn't count that as part of the sticker price of the car. So the German government found out about that, and they were like, no, you're giving all that back.
I don't know how I feel about that.
But Tesla has pledged they're going to pay all the stuff back.
Well, that's a pretty nice.
It's a good way of dealing with
goodwill.
it. Yeah.
But imagine a future where cars actually are that modular. Because I know when I've gone to buy a car, and it's like, you want how much for a DVD player, or how much for, power windows? You guys are crazy.
Yeah, in this case, it was like backup camera and some of the automation package, which is literally just software.
Yeah. So I don't understand why. And you could already have added that after the fact anyway for just the software.
Yeah. So they also claim that they are going to have an option package in Germany that will adhere without the trickery. So going forward, people could still do it.
Neat. Prime Day was last week.
That was it was a big story. Do you remember how long it was actually down? I know at least 30 minutes, but I think they fixed it pretty quickly after that.
Honestly, it was super intermittent. I actually ordered a bunch of stuff, and I just hammered reload a bunch, and it was fine. I was also able to use Firebug to hide, like, if certain parts of the page wouldn't load, and when that certain part of the page wouldn't load, it would cause the whole page to spaz out. But if you just use Firebug tools to tell it don't load those pages, it was mostly around the affiliated and like related content. You could go through the checkout process fine.
You could also, TechCrunch said you could use the smiles.amazon.com subdomain. Everything worked. So I don't know if that was a DNS routing issue or what, but
I think probably the thing that did like the referral for like related products and other stuff, I think that was spazzing out because everything else worked fine.
Didn't have an elegant failure
for
those parts of the page. So you might think, well, that must have screwed them. Like how many sales do you lose in the first 45 minutes of Prime Day? And
Jeff Bezos laughed all the way to the bank.
Yeah, terrible times. But it turns out Jeff Bezos becomes the richest man in modern history. Now you might be saying, wait a minute, Jeff Bezos was already the richest man in the world. No, not richest man in the world, richest man in modern history. I think Bill Gates at one point was richer than Jeff Bezos has ever gotten to, and since gave away most of his money. But now, in modern history, no one has ever been richer than Jeff Bezos.
So like all those steel barons that did all those terrible things and all that, Jeff Bezos far exceeds them.
I believe that's even adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Totally not Lex Luthor.
And this came on the back of Prime Day. It was actually a huge success. It was the biggest day of retail sales ever, or online sales ever. So,
yeah.
Pretty incredible.
Sort of crazy. He needs to just buy a Tesla and help. It's like...
I don't think Musk could ever handle that. He couldn't give up control.
Yeah, that's probably true.
He couldn't handle having a boss, I don't think.
I think Musk is naive though, that like if Jeff Bezos was Lex Luthor, that because I don't think Musk is evil, but I think that Musk working for Jeff Bezos would see him as like a good guy and would work real hard for him. But Musk would have no idea that he's actually like building the machinery for World War III or world domination or whatever.
Well, there actually is a story about that. But yeah, he's not. I think it's very rare that anybody sees themselves as evil. Like, yeah. I don't think Hitler saw himself as evil. So, of course, Musk thinks he's doing the right thing.
Speaking of people that don't think they're evil, let's talk about Facebook.
And Google.
And Microsoft.
And Twitter. This is, I guess this is a good thing. I can't see too much wrong with this. The one thing I think is good about this is it lets the replacement for Facebook come into the world.
Because you can transfer your data off the Facebook platform.
Right. Think about it. Like right now, you can never compete with Facebook because everybody's got all their stuff on Facebook and all their friends are there and they're invested into it. But now with this new project, you could pull your entire Facebook identity and I can, knowing what that data looks like, build an import for it on my website.
So, pro Fortune 500 deflection tip. What if building this facility allows you to deflect future Cambridge Analytica scandals in the future, where it's like, hey, users elected to move their data off our platform. We had nothing to do with that.
That's true, yeah. And I think that is a big part of what this is doing. Is like they're fighting that. They're hearing those antitrust monopoly bells ringing, and they're doing anything they can to silence them.
Yeah.
So the idea here is you can pull your data off of any of these platforms and go to another platform. If Microsoft were to build a social media platform, you're like, I love Microsoft, I want to go there. You can take all your existing stuff, move it over to there. No problem.
If you want, the last time this happened was the Microsoft Office file formats. So you should go read a quick summary of what happened when Microsoft opened up the Microsoft Office file formats. The short version is we still don't have anything that can correctly understand the Microsoft Office file formats other than Microsoft Office.
Well, Uber, we talked about Uber last time with their gender lawsuit. Another thorn in their paw, you might say, is that New York has decided that Uber drivers are not contractors. They are employees, at least in terms of unemployment.
Wow. But Uber's not happy about that.
Very, very unhappy about this. You know who's ecstatic about it? Taxi unions. They're the ones who pretty much got this pushed through. But a couple of guys sued them. They got dismissed by Uber. They don't call it firing. It's just like removed from the network, I think is what they call it. And they were like, well, I'm unemployed now, so I should get unemployment insurance, right? And Uber says, no, you weren't employed, but New York has decided, yes, you will.
Now, there's an interesting nuance to this in that I think New York is one of the states that has underemployment laws. And so, like, if you have a full-time, I don't know, but it's, as I understand it, that if you work for somewhere like Walmart or wherever, and you work 40 hours a week, and then they take you down to like 20 hours a week, but you need 40 hours a week to work, you can still apply for unemployment to make up the difference because you're working less than you expect.
But with Uber, in a market like New York, do you think there's a constant ability to pull fares?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like they may have opened Pandora's box with this ruling because during the non-busy times there may be so many Uber drivers during the busy times that it's not possible for all of the Uber drivers to get as much driving as they want.
And that's kind of the appeal of Uber, is that you can just turn it off whenever you want, but now you have to clock a certain amount of hours a week, I guess, to qualify for all these benefits. That sort of changes that dynamic. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Uber is, of course, hoping to appeal it and fight it, and who knows? Maybe we'll get another.
They're going to go the Amazon route and help people like get their own fleet of trucks and stuff. that Amazon story from a couple of weeks ago is very, very related to this story where Amazon is like, we want independent owner operators for the fleet vehicles, but we don't want to open up this employment Pandora's box because you can't make money. I mean, like if you could do it algorithmically and pay the state and federal taxes and the appropriate amount of benefits and whatever, Amazon would be crazy not to do it. But the game for rubes that want to do this is that you can't actually reasonably employ people to do this. So you have to have them chasing a carrot.
Well, speaking of Amazon, they've stricken fear into the hearts of all of their competitors. And maybe number one among them is Walmart. And when you're Walmart, you need an online cloud presence and you need all this technology to try and catch up. Who do you go to? Well, you can't go to Amazon.
So Microsoft, they get Azure. I'm so sorry, Walmart. I'm so sorry.
So they're going to be using, Azure in the cloud, and they're going to be doing some other things to try and, gimmicky things, apps and so forth to get people to Walmart. They're going to be doing a online shipping type deal. I think they're already doing that. So
it could work. I mean, honestly, I don't know why I don't know why Walmart hasn't made better use of their delivery infrastructure, because I mean, think about like Amazon 5 or 10 years ago. Walmart had better distribution centers, better logistics, better product handling, better like layaway and like service desk pickup, like online ordering pickup. How did Amazon screw this up? I mean, how did Walmart screw this up? Because they were ahead internally in every way. It just wasn't accessible to the public.
See, I wonder if Walmart is trying to be something that they're not. Because, I mean, you think about Walmart, you think about a certain kind of customer. I think that's pretty obvious. Most people know that. And remember when McDonald's was like, yeah, we're going to get into these artisan burgers.
That did not work out for them.
No, because when you go to McDonald's, you're not looking for an artisan burger. And when you go to Walmart, you're not looking for a state-of-the-art shopping experience. You're looking for mountain lighting. And
in my case, I want to get in and out as fast as possible.
Yeah. So I think they need to cater more to their demographic. But maybe they don't see a future in that. I don't know.
The BBC has a great story about Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix. I was thinking about this story when I was thinking about the Tesla thing, because Netflix made $360-some million this last earnings report, but they didn't grow. And when you don't grow, well, they did grow. They grew like 5 million, but that wasn't what was expected. And when that happens, people are just like, you're done. It's over. So yeah, they lost quite a bit of stock value as they reported poor growth.
Well, it couldn't have anything to do with the fact they raised prices, could it?
I wonder about that. I've noticed on Netflix that I'm kind of saturated right now. Like I've watched everything I want to watch on Netflix, so I could easily turn it off for a month or two.
They also have multiple plans now. So like the family plan, like the regular plan is like you can have 2 streams at the same time. Then like the family plan is like 5, but then some of them are HD. And I don't know what the rules are now. I'm on the lowest plan. And
they're like the wireless carriers.
Yeah.
They got all these confusing plans, and it burns you out. But what the analysts are blaming it on is, much like Tesla, Netflix has not had competitors so far.
You know what would probably work for Netflix is like if you could give Netflix extra money, and if you didn't, you could use the extra money for like value add things. But if you didn't use anything, you could put it toward like getting free, quote unquote, DVD box sets and things like that. So it's like, I haven't watched any Netflix or done anything for that. I've got 10 Netflix bucks. Oh, I could get the complete 7 seasons of like Monk or something, and they'll just mail it to me. And that's actually just their old mailer DVDs that they don't need anymore.
They would eat through those pretty quickly, I think. And
it's for the premium Netflix customers. So I mean,
but I think a lot of the people who sign up and forget about it are a big part of their revenue.
I know somebody that they budget like $80 or $90 a month for their entertainment budget, and most of that goes towards like iTunes and Netflix and whatever, but it's like hard at like $90. And so they will cancel and uncancel Netflix, and then they'll like buy a season pass on iTunes, and then they'll buy like a DVD box set. And that actually works really well. Like I'm surprised at how much media that they're able to get access to on $90 a month. Their media collection is very impressive.
That's a lot of micromanagement, though.
Yeah, it really is.
You got to have time.
We got to do an app to do that.
That would immediately get banned by every.
Well, what if Netflix did it? Like Netflix is like, okay, we're gonna partner with Amazon and actually just let you buy stuff if you don't watch a lot of stuff.
So, are you saying like I could see it's a monthly fee, but then you pay like 99 cents per view?
Yeah.
And then if you don't use it, it rolls over?
Yeah, it rolls over and accumulates, and they'll give you a discount on box sets and stuff that you can actually buy or downloads. So you can download this into, not iTunes, obviously, because Apple's not going to play ball with that.
Amazon could do that and let you build toward it when you take the cheap shipping.
Yeah.
Amazon should do that.
Pro new business tip.
Pro Lex Luthor tip. Well, one business thing that you might count on and may have built software that heavily relies on is going to be taken away from you, sadly.
Oh, this Google Maps API BS is going to give me, like, I'm already sick. I'm just going to pass out on the floor over here.
They give you, so Google Maps is going on a pay plan, but they're going to give you $200 a month, which $200 a month for map API queries, that's pretty generous.
But there's a catch.
There's a huge catch, which is always the catch when you sign up for free, right? Like everything where it's like, get 3 months for free and try it out. And you're like, yeah, that sounds good. And you get to a certain point, and what do they ask for? A credit card.
So you have to have a credit card on file. Otherwise, you don't get an API key. But you get $200 of usage for free. But if you go over that, it bills your credit card. There's no option to just be like, I don't bill. Just make my app stop working. I don't care.
Which seems, I mean, that would be so easy to implement.
I guess don't be evil. They're really taking the abandonment of that very seriously.
Yeah. So if, that's one of those things where, let's say you've got a little blog somewhere and you've got a Google map on it for whatever reason, and something you created goes viral, you might get a $5,000 bill from Google at the end of the month.
Can confirm, as somebody who's set up an experiment on like Azure or Amazon or something, that's like, I only want this to run for a day, and I didn't click the wrong thing, and then at the end of the month, it's like, oh, $700, that's cool. Yeah.
So that's sad because Google Maps is such a convenient thing, and you're gonna have maybe I imagine you could get like a burner, like a prepaid card.
It's also worth mentioning that this year is the year that 2 or 3 Google Maps competitors that offered reasonably okay API access to map data have gone out of business.
It's funny because on Zillow, because I'm always looking at houses, they use Bing, but because one of the features that all the other real estate sites have is they'll let you plot directions from your workplace to your new house and how long that's going to take and all the details about the trip. Bing can't do directions. So when you click the directions button on the Bing map, you go to Google Maps.
That's really funny.
Oh, I should have put this next story with the other Amazon thing. I missed that. And also, yes, we realize this is probably not the best source for this news story. The World Socialist website. But the story is not so much to me about the police attacking the strikers, which probably did happen. I don't have trouble believing that in Spain. But that on Prime Day, there was a concerted strike at the Amazon factories in
Europe.
Spain. I think it was all across Europe, wasn't it? Like
yes.
Germany had some.
Yep. Well, in Spain, they got beat up. The police just beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Because in Spain, the economy is real bad, and it's like you don't do anything to mess with the economy.
Right, yeah. So they were escorting the scabs to and from, so the strikers couldn't mess with them, and eventually they got bored of that and just beat them savagely. So, yeah. It's, you read so much about how bad things are at Amazon. But my initial response to that is, don't work at Amazon, right? And I guess some people are
in Spain. You might not have a choice.
Yeah, and the economy is real bad, and they probably moved some warehouses there for that reason. But still, I don't know. They want a lot of. Or actually, they're fighting. Amazon is so powerful in Spain because again, the economy is crap. They were able to do. Let's look at the list of things. It's pretty horrific what they're doing. Lower wage increases, no more pay increases based on seniority, 25% reduction in sick pay, 2-tier wage system for new hires, and cuts to overtime for extraordinary hours, including holiday and night shifts.
We don't have a story about it, but this has been the trend. Like, this is one of the hallmarks of like a collapsing economy because there was another story about some people that work at a company donating their paid time off to another coworker for maternity leave, and it's like, those are not feel-good stories. Those are stories about how your society has failed and probably corrective action needs to be taken. And so like these stories are, people should not have to live under these conditions.
But at the same time, I have 3 Prime packages coming tomorrow.
They damn well better get here.
Yeah, so I can't really take the high road here because I'm going to shop with Amazon because it's so convenient. And
I don't want to deal with people. I need my packages.
It's such a good experience, and there might be a little blood on those boots that are bringing me my packages, but I sure like getting those packages.
I'm going to make tea and crumpets for my UPS man. It's going to be great.
Well, the warehouse people are the ones who are really suffering.
Don't care.
I think UPS has a pretty decent.
Yeah, UPS is pretty good from ours.
Which is why Amazon is trying to do the the contractors. This story amazed me, and they seem like they got a good response. I don't know, but the Washington Post, and here we go with our Amazon. If you didn't know, Washington Post owned by Bezos, history's richest man, and so the Washington Post, where are they going for their new audience? Twitch.
Well, I would believe that streaming on Twitch would net them more money than newspaper subscriptions. Like, that's believable.
You think people would donate to the Washington Post on Twitch?
I think so.
Subscribe?
I mean, it's the new Washington Post for, millennials in this generation. I don't know.
Well, the millennials are, like, the Washington Post is very lefty. And the millennials seem to be, primarily left-leaning. So I guess it's covering the news they want to hear.
Now, the really dangerous situation that we get into is not that, but when the Washington Post decides to run a story that is, say, inflammatory or a little bit of an echo chamber, the people that are into that kind of an echo chamber are probably going to throw lots of bits at the Washington Post. And that's maybe going to create a dangerous feedback loop.
That will certainly make them, the confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Once you can directly monetize confirmation bias, that's going to be nothing but.
It ends badly.
There's going to be like a 24-hour stream of just Trump jokes.
Yeah, and they will make millions of dollars from it.
Well, I'll tell you who's not going to make. Well, they'll make millions of dollars, but maybe not the number of millions that they had hoped, and that's Comcast, because they've been beaten by
Disney.
A certain mouse.
Disney's acquiring Fox, like Thanos is acquiring Infinity Stones.
Except there's just one.
No, Disney's acquired a lot of other stuff the last couple of years.
Oh, it's true. And Fox, now, I thought they had already gotten the Fox assets, but I don't understand it. Cause
Comcast stepped in at the last second and was like, but wait, there's more. And so Disney had to up their bid.
And they did. And $71 billion, that's quite a bit. They don't get Fox News or Fox Business. I think they do get sports.
And nothing of value was lost.
So if they get Fox Sports, that's going to be ESPN and Fox Sports under the same umbrella. Somebody's going away.
ESPN 8, the Ocho.
So yeah, that's make room for more stuff at Disney. I only curse. This was a Krista story, I think. Did you add this one?
No, I did not add this. I thought this belonged in the nonsense section.
I don't. WeWork is apparently, I had to look this up. They're a company that rents out space. So you can...
Co-working space?
I think it's sort of like, on-demand workspace. So if you're like a contractor or something and you just need some place to go that's got internet access and air conditioning, then you can sort of just like dial up some space and then they'll manage that.
This story did make me angrier than it. Like, I was like, why am I so angry about this?
Well, they're pandering to the base, and so they're getting rid of meat. You're not allowed to have vending machines with any meat products. They're not catering meat in the buildings.
It's red meat, pork, and poultry.
It's all meat, yeah.
I didn't say anything about fish.
Oh, that's true. Well, fish is kind of a borderline thing. I can't think that you get... Is there any vending machine that has fish in it?
There are vending machines that have sushi.
Really?
You get the little packages of sushi.
Oh. I would not trust that.
It's like truck stop egg salad sandwich. It's like you roll the dice a little bit, but yeah.
Heavily weighted dice. I wouldn't go for that. Anyway,
you end up like this.
They're anti-meat, and you can't have meat in any of their workplaces.
We got a lot of gaming news this week.
Yeah, we do. And starting out, Valve, merciless, has banned 90,000 Steam accounts because of VAC.
These are the VAC bans. These are the unappealable bans.
Right. Yeah, it's just over.
And the fact that they banned 90,000 makes me think that they haven't been doing their job for a very, very long time.
Well, I think
that seems like a lot.
They kind of do that. They do them in waves. Because I think what happens is after they do a wave of bans, the people who are using the software that got banned know that that's a bannable software now, and they stop using it.
I only know of one VAC ban that was reversed, and it was one of the engineers for VMware. And it was like one of the machines that he was working on something on, and Valve was like, no, this is terrible. He's like, I'm a VMware engineer. That's why I have this. And they were like, oh, okay.
So, yeah, be careful. Counter-Strike, Rust has it. Dota 2, I think, has it. There's a handful of games with the VAC system on Steam, and don't cheat, because they'll catch you.
Battlegrounds has BattleEye, which is not effective.
It's certainly not. Maybe they should look into VAC. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they want to spend money on their product anymore, because they're like, we're only making tens of millions, man. We should be making hundreds. Well, Amazon, again, another Amazon story. So Amazon's got the third-party sellers, and you'll have a bad experience with some third-party sellers one time. I was looking at replacement batteries for my fob for my car.
Oh yeah, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, and I read like 2 or 3 reviews, and they're like, yeah, they opened this and put a dead battery in it and shipped it to me. And so I was like, oh, okay. I'll go to Meijer and get that. But this is kind of that same situation. In this case, somebody bought a GOG version of this game. Good old games.
Which doesn't have DRM.
Yeah.
Which is great. Good job, GOG.
They did. Now, the GOG has the GOG installer, though. So you know if you bought it from GOG. Well, these ne'er-do-wells built their own installer, but they left a lot of the traces of the GOG stuff there.
This was a half-assed scam.
But it worked. They sold this, what was the name of this game? Frostpunk.
Yeah, and some other games for $3 instead of $30. So they just totally ripped everybody off.
Yeah. Now, in Frostpunk, this developer, I can't remember what developer this is, 11-Bit Studios, they, in their defense, are going to honor these games. Wow. And they're actually going to try to figure out a way for these people to get a legit version of the game.
That's good on them, but that's not like this. Actions like that are especially damaging to the gaming community, and we in the gaming community should do whatever we can to track down that person and make sure that they go to court or stand trial or whatever, because it adds fuel to the argument for game companies to put really super egregious DRM in their games. And GOG is one of the very few companies that, you know, it's not DRM, it trusts the user, it's very good. But when you do this kind of egregious piracy abuse, it should be grounds for the electric chair.
Yeah, the cool thing about GOG is if it's DRM, they just don't sell it.
Yeah.
You have to agree to have just an installer. They've got their own little Steam-like thing, but you don't have to use it.
It takes a special kind of evil to abuse that.
For $3 a copy, too, they couldn't have made much. Good news is, it was quickly caught. As soon as somebody brought the attention from the 11-bit people, they contacted Amazon. It was taken down quickly. They have to know where that money went, so I'm sure that'll be turned over to law enforcement.
God, I hope so. Well, string him up by his toes.
Speaking of game studios that maybe a lot of people thought should be strung up by their toes or possibly other extremities.
No Man's Sky was back in the news this week.
They've actually, well, I don't know if anybody's seen it in play yet, but they claim.
Don't trust it.
Full multiplayer.
Don't trust it.
I don't believe it. Some other features space fleets and freighters and bigger bases and so forth.
So that stuff that we were promised at launch is coming 2 years later?
They're also going to launch the game for consoles.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So.
Well played.
I don't know. I mean, we're often pretty desperate for games to play on Twitch because
we'll revisit it
because we don't know what to play. But yeah, will we? I don't know. Maybe we will.
Oh, this news is delightful. This would definitely belong in nonsense.
Well, it's social media, so I think it's not nonsense though because it's something that should have happened and did. Well, although it's nonsense that it took this long.
Yes, it's definitely nonsense that it took this long. So if you haven't seen this channel, you remember the Daddy05 channel? It's now Family of 5. If you haven't seen that, like, you probably should just not go watch it.
Well, you can't now.
Well, I'm sure that there's archives of it somewhere online.
Yeah,
but this really represents the worst of humanity.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard of it or seen it, it was a family with 5 children.
Now 3.
I think they should be banned from YouTube just for that.
2 of the children were taken away for these videos.
Yeah. So they had some older kids and some younger kids, and for the most part, they pranked the younger kids because they were easily to prank.
Prank in the sense of like Jackass, the TV series.
Well, a lot of it was there was some physical abuse, but mostly just mental abuse, like accusing a 5-year-old of something that he didn't do, and not accepting his plea that he was innocent, and telling that he was going to be in trouble, and watching a 5-year-old just descend into tears and be completely crushed because he's innocent. And he's being subjected to a punishment, and then after 5 minutes, of that being like, "Oh, it's just a joke," and then putting that on YouTube. Like that's what we're dealing with.
Those kids are going to be serial killers.
And can we blame them when they are? I think probably they'll just go to crack. But even then, I'm not sure that we can hold it against them necessarily.
And of course, the YouTube algorithm is like, you'll probably like this. It's like,
But yeah, they're off YouTube. Oh, I've clicked the thing.
we almost made it through the episode without the ads getting in the way.
Oh, well, I can read. Oh, here we go.
Oh, the British Airways story, man. You guys should have already seen this because this was everywhere. British Airways, so GDPR, right? Like protecting people's data. Oh man.
Well, this is a two-pronged assault on GDPR. Two horrible things. One, which I think they knew they were doing and were trying to get away with, and one was just some Twitter person being an absolute moron. So, what tipped this guy off to contact British Air on Twitter was he found he could not submit his airline information.
Because GDPR.
He was trying to reserve something on a flight, and it wouldn't submit. So he was a developer, and he started looking into it. And it was like, hey, look at all these things that are being blocked by my ad blocker. So he turned that off, and he submitted, and it worked. And the reason was because British Airways was sharing marketing data with so many companies that are known to be, tracking you, that his ad blocker was blocking the trackers. And you can't reserve a flight unless you allow yourself to be tracked. It's not in the text or anything, but just the way the website works, you can't do it.
Oh, the web developers in the audience just puckered their little bit. Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad.
So that's strike one. That's bad. So he contacts Twitter, British Airways Twitter, and he's like, hey, look what I found. And their response was, can you reply with your passport number and your, all of your personal information and your address and your payment info? And they didn't say direct message. They just said reply with. So then he looked in their history and he saw that that's how they did it. That was their MO. And people were replying in public view with all of this information. And they said you have to do that because GDPR. I mean, what can you say about that?
That's a level of stupid that makes me want to pass out.
And that's not even the cold medicine. Oh, here we go. The browser's it's on its last legs. We'll get through three more stories.
Facebook, in the case of the Crimson Hexagon, it reads like an Arthur Conan Doyle novel.
Yeah, the Crimson Hexagon. Like, how do you think they came up with that name?
I think that it was probably like Palantir. It's like kind of a nod to the evilness of their corporation.
Suppose, yeah. Crimson Hexagon sounds like kind of like a death metal band, maybe.
Yeah. So this was a government agency or government. Well, not a government agency.
They worked with the government agencies.
Yeah.
They had contracts from them.
And they had access to the data. It worked differently than the Cambridge Analytica data, but they maybe had access to data they shouldn't have.
It was similar, yeah. But what Facebook has discovered that this data was being used by the government. I didn't discover. They probably already knew, right? But that also turns out these guys had a similar deal with Twitter, what Twitter calls the fire hose. It's like the fire hose of metadata that you can get if you have a partnership with them. And this, I think Facebook stopped this or noticed that something might be wrong because of the ICE stuff.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these agencies are using this metadata to try to find the undocumented people.
It's this is just suspended pending investigation, but it's not actually shut down completely. So they may turn it back on.
But it does show that Cambridge-like things are still going on at Facebook.
Yes.
And enough that internally they're getting scared.
Yeah.
And looking really hard at some of these.
Well, Zuck was back in the news this week again, just because he was interviewed somewhere or something, and it was like, who do we blame for this? Who do we blame? And at first it sounded like he was going to have a very mature response for that. He's like, this is a systemic thing. That's, these features are sort of built into the platform. And then they were like, well, who should be fired? And he finally just said, well, if anybody's going to be fired, it should be me.
And the interviewer followed up with, okay, you should be fired. Are you going to fire yourself? And he said, not right now.
Of course.
Yes, I don't think he will. No.
Well, I mean, this is the closest that he's come, I think, in this what has been published about this interview, to saying literally what we've been saying since day one of the scandal, which is Facebook was literally designed to do exactly what happened here. How hard is that to understand?
And if you're a shareholder, that's what you expect.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way the company's going to make money.
Yeah. So, Motherboard also got its hands on some juicy, delicious leaked documents regarding Facebook.
Yeah, this is so we've always known that Facebook will turn off your group page or shut down your account or whatever if you do certain things. But it was always kind of up in the air. The big, the interview that we just talked about, one of the big things from that was the Holocaust denial thing.
Yeah.
So they talked about, it's like, well, what if someone is a Holocaust denier on Facebook? And his response was, well, I don't think they're doing it maliciously, or I think they believe what they're saying or whatever.
So we're just going to de-emphasize it.
Which means it wouldn't be a bannable offense, and people got real upset about that. So this document kind of lays out where the line is in terms of when to turn things off. And like with sexual nudity type stuff, you get, I think, 2 strikes. For political fake news, you get 9 in a 30-day period. And they've just got all these arbitrary rules about how much is too much of each offense, which is interesting.
It is worth a look if you're interested in things going on that platform. If you're in marketing, you should definitely take a look at this because it tells you exactly what you can get away with.
Yeah, you think that the fake news people will adjust
Yes.
their algorithms? It's like, all right, so we're gonna post fake news on Monday, and then Tuesday through Thursday it's just gonna be fluff pieces, and then Friday we're gonna hit 2 fake newses. We're gonna hit hard on Friday. And then we'll wait until the next Tuesday again.
Yeah, I think they're going to start adopting a strategy. Patton Oswalt, I think, did this originally in 2013, where he would tweet something, and then it was one of 2 tweets, and so like he would set something up in the first tweet, and then the second tweet taken by itself was like the most highly offensive thing ever. Like it was insane how offensive it was. But the first tweet was like, I would never say something like. And then the next thing is, Hitler did nothing wrong or whatever. And that has been an hilarious experiment because a lot of people are catching the second tweet, but not realizing the context of the first tweet that sets it up for the second tweet. And so I think the fake news people will probably adopt the same strategy just from reading this Motherboard article.
I think that still gets you a strike, though.
Yeah, well, but it's not. You could argue that it wasn't intentional, but it was totally intentional. I mean, not really. I don't know, satire. I don't know how you.
Well, Facebook doesn't have the character limit, so it's harder to.
It's harder to justify that. Yeah, Patton Oswalt did. I mean, he did it with within the character limits and everything. It was brilliant.
Oh, the browser just crashed, but luckily that was our last story, so we don't need it. It's going to be tough to do the 1 tab now.
That's the end of the Level 1 news for Wednesday. And gosh, we are really slow getting the news out, but it's okay because I'm dying.
Yeah. And coming up on Friday, we got a healthy dose of nonsense on Friday. We've also got security and did we do AI yet?
I don't think we did. Did we?
Did we do robots? Yeah, we did. No, did we? I don't know. Maybe AI and robots. I've lost count, but
we'll see Friday.
It'll be something quality. So check us out. It's Friday.
I made it to Friday and I'm still dying.
July 27th. You got about an hour left. Maybe a few minutes over an hour because it turned out we had a lot of stories at the end this week.
There's so many stories.
But some of them are nonsense, and the nonsense stories don't always take a long time. So let's burn through them.
Fast Company, this story is just... Summer camps, of all places, are using face recognition to keep... Jesus Christ. Summer camps.
Look at this picture. This looks like it's straight out of the 70s. This doesn't look like modern kids. So the idea here, you're wondering like, well, what do summer camps need to do with facial recognition? Are they losing the campers? No. What they're doing is, as you're camping, you take group photos like this. Or maybe you're out and it's bow and arrow day. Do you think they let them do bow and arrow in modern millennials?
It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Can't even do lawn darts
Maybe
anymore.
Nerf.
No, I mean, just you put out an eye. Unless you got like full headgear.
Whatever you're doing, whatever, safe spaces you're participating in your current camping experience, they're taking pictures like, oh, look at the camping kids. Well, if you're a doting parent who has paid the additional fee and uploaded your child's face picture to be tracked, you can be notified of any of those pictures that your child is in. And if you're not, you're going to have to scroll through all the pictures and try to find your kid like a pleb. And they're going to have your kid's face photo forever.
If you're a parent, don't do this. Don't just don't.
Maybe just deal with your kid through the summer. Maybe you try to teach your kid a couple of things
Or ask your kid to share pictures with you directly rather than whatever this is.
Well, the camp probably owns the pictures.
Send your kid. Your kid's got a cell phone, right? Just have them take their own pictures.
How do you send a cell phone to a camp? That seems like you'd want to get. I'm sure you do. I don't know. Child rearing is. I can't imagine how difficult it is to deal with that in the modern era. Because everything's against you.
Our next story combines two of my favorite things: open MongoDB databases and money laundering.
They always go together. It's like chocolate and peanut butter. So this was a plan, a pretty good plan actually, because when you steal a credit card, the question is, what do I spend this money on? Because you buy goods, you have to get them delivered to you, and that's risky. And if you buy online things, how do you monetize it? Well, these guys figured it out. They were creating Apple ID accounts fraudulently, which was pretty easy to do. Shame on you, Apple. And they were using their stolen credit cards to buy Clash Royale and what's the other one? It's all the Royale games. I guess there's microtransactions in those games, so they were buying up microtransaction stuff and then selling the Apple account. Not a bad plan. One thing brought them down.
Open MongoDB accounts?
MongoDB. They had a MongoDB that was a database of all the credit cards and all the accounts they had created with them and how much real money were on them and what they were for sale for.
And I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for your meddling kids.
It was literally a security researcher who found them out. So there's a good plan. It's been ruined. Now Apple has been contacted, and whoever creates those Clash games, Clash of Clans or whatever.
You know, there have been some fascinating. We should maybe do a mini story, a mini segment or whatever on like modern money laundering stuff, because there've been a lot of really fascinating things. Like there are like super shitty paperback books on Amazon that are like $2,000, and it's like, what is this? And it's like, oh, this is a way to move money out of the country.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and even whole e-commerce sites set up for. There used to be a scam where there were companies. It was like, if we don't care how bad your credit is, we will give you a credit card. And that was true. But the only thing you could use that credit card on was their store. And on their store, a toothbrush was like $50. And in the agreement, you had to spend so much a month. So,
yeah,
and that was borderline legal. And that's, data leaks. We rarely get through a week without some serious data leaks. And this week is no exception. And a second data leak. This was from the automakers.
I don't think this article should actually call what has been leaked automakers' trade secrets. It's trade secrets like, I don't know, the mafia's list of who's paying protection money is a trade secret.
Now, I hope that, yeah. So the worst thing about this article, the absolute worst thing, I can't stand it, is the company that was stealing them.
Level 1 robotics and controls.
They must be destroyed. There's only one Level 1.
Damn it, there goes our robotics wing.
So, this is a Canadian company, so maybe it's okay. But these guys, it's the old story of...
Canadians are always so nice.
I don't know if they didn't do it on purpose, but it was the old story of, it wasn't us that leaked the data, it was a third party. And they were third party to a lot of different auto manufacturers, and they lost a lot of their data. Tesla, I think, was one of them.
I just don't understand how having this, like, building, like, your IT people literally set out to build a database that is like, how can we scam our customers? Like, that's the title of the database.
Well, the secrets leaked were not so much trade secrets as, like, how are we really doing financially and stuff like that.
And what are people? How much is somebody willing to pay for a CD player in this day and age? Is it $600? Because I think it's $600.
So embarrassing, but at least it's not something they're going to be on the hook for in terms of like GDPR and Cambridge Analytica.
Some hideously evil person or brilliant person has built a database of IoT passwords.
How you pronounce that? Dahua?
I have no idea how to pronounce that.
They make DVRs apparently, and they have patched those DVRs. But who firmware updates a DVR? Nobody.
No.
Nobody ever.
Not a lot of people even change the passwords. Like some of them are patched but still have default passwords, which is like, wow, you patched it but you didn't change the password?
So yeah, all of those. It turns out that you can. There's 2 ports. There's SSH and I can't remember what the other one was called, but you can query either of those ports, and the DVR will be like, "Yes, here's the login info." And so there's a huge database of them, and you can search it, and you can do what you want with these DVRs.
In before federally mandated law that law enforcement will always have access to your DVR if it's on the internet.
That kind of is I think what they want with that story we talked about with the FBI guy.
Yeah.
He wants a port that he can hit with a flag that says, "I'm FBI."
I am the law.
And it just lets you in.
And obviously your router is smart enough to tell the difference between that guy and a Russian. Sorry, Russia. There come the downloads.
Now this story, this is a very specific thing. This maybe sounds a little more dangerous than it is. But what's going on here is some people have come up with a way to get into iPhones that takes an astonishing level of social engineering.
Yeah.
This is not something you're accidentally going to download. You got to go in and give it permission. Basically, it's like, yes, you can take over the phone. But some people are willing to do that, which is astonishing.
Well, I think also probably evil maid type attacks or in like intelligence agencies or whatever. It's like, I'm going to go check out the hotel pool and leave my phone in the room. And then they come in and do whatever.
Yeah,
maybe.
really.
But these apps look like WhatsApp and Telegram, but they're not the real WhatsApp and Telegram services. But even more insidious is that the attackers made the hacked applications look like it was the Russian intelligence service that did it.
So they used a mail.ru address, but clearly they were faking it because it's not just WhatsApp and Telegram. They can install any app they want once they get it's a very low level malware. And the first 2 versions of it that are registered in the Apple database were testing for that thing. It was named This Thing Test, and they were from India. So, and it's affecting Indians, so it seems like it's a local thing. So if you're in India and someone, like, don't leave your phone laying around, and if someone calls you and it's like, we need to go through a ridiculous number of steps so that I can help you with tech support, don't do that.
You got your tax rebate. I'm just going to need you to go into your phone and disable application signing. And then
It really is that convoluted an amount of steps. This story, it's not surprising at all.
No.
I think we've known this for a while on some level, but
ProPublica is talking about this.
it does make you think, and it's very worrying. And this is health insurance.
Health insurers are vacuuming up details about you, and it could raise your rates. Health insurers don't actually care about vacuuming up data. What health insurers want to do is find any reason to deny your claim that they could possibly find. And the more data they have, the more they can cite for, it's like, oh, you didn't tell us this.
Right, and then, so when you think about, okay, that's my healthcare data. There are laws. We got the HIPAA laws, right? No, this is not your healthcare data necessarily. They're looking at every kind of data, and they're making these assumptions like how much crime is on your street. That might raise your health insurance. How, did you go to a certain location that might be associated with something to do with health? Hey, we're going to raise your rates. And there's just a huge amount of metrics that they look at to try and determine if they should raise your rates. And even maybe not even give you health insurance.
Here's a hint. The answer is always yes.
Almost always, yeah. Well, no, because they talk about one of the things they love to do is identify people who are never going to need a claim and get them and reject everybody else. Like one of them got busted for, you had to sign up in person. You couldn't do it over the phone or anything like that. And they were on the 7th floor of a building with no elevator. So if you're already messed up, you're never getting up there. But yeah, the insurance industry is one of the most horrific things. It's really a terrible system. And
it's a horrible system no matter what country you're in, except for countries that have socialized healthcare, in which case it's substandard. Not really, I don't know.
Well, they have their own problems for sure. And
it's fine, probably.
Well, no, it's not fine. But
Speaking of places that have socialized healthcare, Ontario,
Is that a play on Spaghetti-O?
Yeah. Ontario.
There's an old commercial. Yeah, this is some Canadians lost their. This is medical data. This is not an insurance company mining your other data. This is someone losing actual medical data.
Here's a future legal case for you. Can a insurance company use medical data leaked to the public?
How could you prove that they were doing that?
Well, I mean, if you're a health insurance company, that'd be great. It'd be like, we have our bots just hoovering up stuff on the dark web, and we hoovered up your medical record from the dark web. We didn't get it from your official medical records.
Can you force them to explain to you why they raised your rates?
No.
I don't think you can. It's a black box.
Yeah.
They do whatever they want.
Yep.
This was a single workstation in some office that was doing stuff. It was I think it was like one of those urgent care offices or something. Got malware on it, and they went from there to 80,000 patient records.
That's how that works, people.
The weakest link in the chain. It was Barb up front. She works with billing, and
Damn it, Barb, you're going to have to quit playing Farmville on company computers.
she loves Bejeweled, and she'll click on anything you email her. So you got to watch out for Barb. Oh, the browser, it's struggling. Well, this was another. It's another health leak
In Singapore.
Yeah, and the really
1.5 million.
But the big thing about this one was the prime minister was part of it. So
What's the over under on us getting reasonable laws for dealing with healthcare data? Since the prime minister was involved, because plebs, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. Well, this was like I don't know what their healthcare system is like, but I liken it to, again, the instant care type of situations. Like he had gone to one of those places for something, and what is the Singapore name version of Barb? I don't know common Singapore names. Singapore is like a really wealthy country, though. So it's definitely a lot of expensive healthcare going on there, I'm sure. But yeah, just another weak link malware. They get in and they steal. And this was the biggest data leak that Singapore's ever seen, or at least that we know about, that they've admitted to. So
our next story talks about hackers, and hackers are responsible for 90% of the login attempts at online retailers, which I thought it was probably like north of 50%, but 90%? Jesus.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the Have I Been Pwned database, that lets you go in and be like, hey, is my login, is it out there with known passwords? And you can actually query that. And they have an ingenious way of querying that without storing your password, which is a cool story in itself. But those are out there. And even like if it's your first day of being a hacker, quote unquote hacker, as we call everything bad hackers these days, you can just go and get that database and just write a little script to try to log in to various places and say, hey, maybe I'll get lucky. They predict the return rate is about 3%, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was 67% on forums, I think. There's a chart that's not loading. Yeah.
Stolen credentials is big business.
Oh yeah, here we go. The other thing about this article, the one place that I don't know if they didn't report it or whatever, totally immune to this, porn.
Well, they take security very seriously.
I suppose they do. So maybe the online retailers take a few, take some notes from Pornhub. Let Pornhub do an industry, like get together, a retreat.
It's funny. I actually know some people that work in that industry, and it's fascinating because they're very well paid and they're very happy with their job, but they are working on like bleeding edge stuff. They've got all kinds of like the security is really good, and like the credit card payment processing stuff is like really good, multiple layers, and so like everything is like by the book as it should be. And like having worked on like retail projects and like projects for the Fortune 500, it's like, the whole thing's held together with like 3 matchsticks and an angry badger by the Fortune 500. But the porn companies have got it figured out.
One thing about that industry is cash flow.
Yeah.
Like you can afford,
not a problem.
Yeah, you can afford to pay people because you've got constant cash coming in. There's no 90-day waiting period for your billing. You get your cash that day.
That might be an interesting discussion for the comments. Probably want to take that to the forums.
Well, this was not a leak, but this was a outdated router in a Russian bank that led to $1 million worth of stolen money.
That poor bank.
This, if I can scroll, they have I think the name of this hacking group, they call themselves Money Taker, which that gets right to the point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Money Taker.
Very clever. Bravo. Good job.
I can't scroll. But what they did is they got into that one router, and then they got malware into the system at the branch, and then they got from there into the main system. They moved a bunch of money around, and they had a whole network of money mules, they call them, that just, as soon as they made that transfer, they began hitting ATMs.
Wow.
Pulled all the cash out, and then it's gone. And everybody melts back into the crowd, and you're done. Oh, there went the browser.
Well, this story was really, really, really fascinating because we had that, Trump-Putin summit, and Chinese hackers targeted the Internet of Things at this summit. And I saw this happen once at like a conference. There was like a proof of concept demonstration. The hotel was completely pwned. The hotel had a VoIP system, and within 20 or 30 minutes of the security team arriving, they had full control over the VoIP phones, but they were actually able to turn the VoIP phones into microphones surreptitiously. So like anywhere there was a VoIP phone, it could just listen in. And so they were just clicking around from phone to phone to phone until they found a phone that was close to the conference that was going on. And you had no idea that they were there.
Yeah, and of course they were trying to get any kind of inclination of what Trump and Putin. I imagine they weren't the only ones meeting. There were probably some lower members in other rooms hashing some things out, and China wanted to get an earful of that. No idea if they did or not, but they talk about how there's kind of it's like there's a background radiation just from space. There's a background level of Chinese hacking, but it went up like 600% during that time. Yeah. So they very much noticed it.
Yeah, that's crazy, Chinese hackers.
They also talked about there was a level of hacking from the U.S. and from the EU.
Oh well, obviously,
but nothing compared to what China was up to. So
China was so busy hacking, nobody could check their Gmail.
Well, and the security problems roll on, and this one isn't about a new threat, but how do people keep getting malware onto the Play Store? That's the question.
Well,
why do we see it over and over?
I have a problem with the headline here because it's like droppers is how Android malware keeps making it onto the Play Store, and so this is not a problem that you can solve really easily, I think, unless you sandbox all the applications away from all of the other applications.
Yeah, so if you're not hip to the dropper, what they're doing is they're getting an application onto the Play Store, and then through updates, they're turning it into something worse by moving the malware payloads onto it in a future update. Well, so they get in.
The malware payloads don't necessarily even have to go through the Play Store. The application has network access, so it can do it directly itself.
Downloading. And they talk about how these things, like if you're good at building a dropper, you might not even build malware. You just build the dropper and you can rent space, which is hilarious. It's like time sharing hacking. And
the only real fix for this would be to force all applications to have all of their API access actually go through Google, which is not really a solution.
Well, it's the Apple way.
Right? Yeah, and even Apple doesn't really do that, although Apple's perhaps a little bit more locked down in that they specifically prohibit interpreted code.
But think about, how's the EU going to respond to that? That's a rock and a hard place right there. So, yeah, I'm very, very, very critical about what apps I download these days. I go pretty bare bones with apps. It's just like I can't trust them. Do I really? I mean, games, I've just never found any fun with mobile gaming, and the core apps do most of your productivity. So what else do you need?
There was a ROM for the Asus, the x86 Asus phone that would actually let you run another version of Android in a virtual machine. And so that was great because I had the one Android instance of Android for all my important stuff, and then I could spool up another isolated Android on the same phone that had Pixel Dungeon and all the other bullshit on it. And so it's like, if Pixel Dungeon's spying on whatever I'm doing and that copy of Android on my phone, I'm okay with that because it can't get to the important stuff in the other Android.
Well, Pixel Dungeon's open source. That can do no wrong.
You can compile it yourself.
Yeah, so you can totally trust Pixel Dungeon. Of course, there are 10 billion versions of Pixel Dungeon now.
Yeah, because
so
the whole open source.
Like half of them spy on you. So.
Yeah, it's probably bad. Well, Cisco is back in the news again. It's like
how many weeks in a row now?
This is the
4?
5th instance.
Is it 5?
It's so like fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. What if you fool me 5 times? Like, is that like seppuku levels of embarrassment? I don't understand.
Well, in their defense, they found this one on their own.
They started looking into things like maybe we should check this stuff.
Yeah. So this was a bandwidth monitoring software, and it's the same old story, the same Cisco story we're used to at this point. Hard-coded root password.
Yeah, Cisco stuff has a hard-coded, like full access password. Again, 5th time. Why are we still getting this? Like, just build your own, I guess. Because could it not, like, do you think Cisco's that incompetent, or is this the intelligence apparatus at work?
I think they're that incompetent. I think
that's a shocking level of incompetence.
I think they probably had a lot of different teams working on different products, and there was no oversight into what shortcuts they were taking until now. And then they're finding them all at once, and they're disclosing them. And yeah, they're in trouble.
The IEEE organization has our next story, and it's fascinating. Turns out you can be racist against a robot.
I don't know how much I buy into this. At first I read the headline, I was like, well, okay, I can see that. But then you start reading this guy's paper, and it's a little
bit of a stretch.
It's a little millennial.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And
so black robots versus white robots.
Yeah, he thinks there are too many white robots. I'm trying to think. The Alexa's white, right? But you can get other colors, can't you?
You can get a black HomePod, which is Siri. That's Apple.
Google's got a black one.
Yeah.
The Boston Robotics, aren't those black? The dogs?
I think those are different. You can get those in camouflage.
Well, so here's the thing. Well, that leads me to my next point. Why don't we just make robots that are not colors of, like, we could do Cookie Monster blue and Fire Engine red. Nobody's that color, right? That's the problem solved. But yeah, this guy, he surmises that people are racist against black robots.
So bad.
But
there's this. If you want to go read the story, why don't you read the story and let us know what you think? Because
I've never, you could say that racism is subconscious or whatever, but I've never looked at a robot and had any sort of feelings about them based on their color. I don't think.
No. I thought this robot looks really derpy based on its appearance, but
yeah. I'm trying to think, like, of all the robots we've looked at, I guess a lot of them are white. Flippy was white.
Flippy, yeah.
I think.
The one that drowned itself during the existential crisis, that one was white.
But what about all the robots of history? A lot of them were like chrome.
Yeah.
What is that? Is that a race? Does shiny mean white?
I don't think chrome was really even a color before then. I mean, before, the modern era, probably, maybe. I guess we had silver. Silver's kind of a chromey color. I don't know what I'm saying. It's delusional. I'm all hopped up on cough medicine.
I think we can agree that robots do not inherently have a race of origin, but could they possibly have a religion?
Google Translate is spitting out sinister religious prophecies. I remember reading this headline, but I don't remember anything about this.
Well, it's got to. Let's see if we can find one. Yeah. Okay. So if you search for dog, you get this sort of horrible thing about Jesus' return.
No, it's translating from Maori to English.
Right, yes. And a couple of sort of edge languages, I guess you would say, are about this. So they gave a couple of different possible reasons. The one that made the most sense to me is a language like, is it Maori or Maori? I don't know. Maori?
I might have mispronounced it.
A language like that doesn't have a lot of translated documents with which to teach an AI. But there is one document that has been translated into every language, and that's the King James Bible.
Oh, so that explains why everything is...
So the AI...
I don't remember the Doomsday Clock being in the King James Bible.
Well, this is probably like some, other it's literature based on Christianity, which there is a lot of, and it is aggressively translated. But they talk about how the Google Translate has been moved to a neural network. So the neural network, when it can't find anything, it's just like, just grab something. And it's what it's grabbing is what it knows, which is religious text.
I want them to write a new version of the Canticle for Leibowitz with this kind of like AI running amok in mind, with the people being like, well, the AI said we're going to do this. I mean,
and it does seem it's odd though that in all the examples they gave, there was sort of like a hellfire and brimstone type quotes. You know, it never pulled anything like all the more loving things that Jesus said. It shows the horrible ones. Now this, I was hoping to get Krista's feelings about this robot.
Well, obviously we need that for our conference room.
It's really cool. The cool thing about it, I don't know how good you can see it on our little screen here, but these wires, there's only 2 wires. And so you nail up some brackets and connect these little tiny wires, and it can move all across the wall based on that.
It's a printer for the whiteboard. I must have this.
Yeah, and it also will erase what it draws. It's just got little markers mounted into it. So
is it less than $1,000?
I don't know if it's for sale yet. Oh, it's Kickstarted. Yeah, $450 device ships by the end of the year.
Oh, that is it going to ship in 3 years then? So we got to get one. I don't know. It's just it looks cool.
It is very cool. I wonder because it must be inherently washable.
Yeah.
So like, would I be able to smear it?
Yeah, I'm sure. I would say that one of the problems they haven't solved yet maybe is how it doesn't smear with its little wheels rolling over whatever it puts down on the whiteboard.
No, that's true.
Because it seems like depending on what you put, that it might have problems.
Well, I bet it moves slow enough that there's time for drying.
Oh, maybe.
I bet it's not fast.
Well, would it work better on like those fancy high-end porcelain whiteboards, or because like it doesn't seem like the marker board stuff ever really dries on like our shitty...
Well, I think that'll work just on a latex wall.
Huh. Okay. Well, we can give it a try.
And that's not the only robot that's painting, but these robots, like Vincent Van Bott...
that's literally from Futurama. Futurama did that first.
Although this company named itself Robot Art, but I read Robotart every time.
Robotart.
Robotart. Oh, man. That's going to be my new online game, or online gaming name. So yeah, here's a picture of something that Robotart put out, or the Vincent Van Bott, owned by Robotart. I don't even know how that works. But
I see suffering and existential dread.
yeah, this is sort of... now, you have to give this guy a starter image, and then he'll, interpret.
Be creative.
But this is done with actual paintbrushes. So it's not like a printer. It's a robot that grabs its brushes and does these things, which I suppose that's impressive. They did a contest and he won. Vincent Van Bott won.
Rolls-Royce makes airplane engines. Today I learned.
Oh yeah, they've made airplane engines for a very long time.
I knew that they made like the bomber engines from like the World War II planes, like the ones that are like the circular. I didn't realize they still made airplane engines.
A lot of prop planes,
yeah,
they don't use. It's not jets. It's just that's basically an inline car engine that's running that propeller,
or a circular car engine,
and
instead of.
Well, no, they have inline engines that run props.
Oh, okay.
So Rolls-Royce is one of the big names, and fixing these complex engines is time consuming and labor intensive. So their solution is tiny robots.
I think we saw pictures of these in the Matrix, where like one of them had like a little laser and it was cutting things. Basically, that's what that is.
You know what I immediately noticed? One thing I immediately noticed about these robots, they're black.
Well, obviously they would be because they're cockroach slave robots. I mean, right?
And then there's also going to be a snake bot that snakes
also
around.
black. That would be
I
black.
don't have a picture of him, but I assume, yeah, because he's crawling around on his belly and he's untrustworthy.
Please realize we're joking. Algorithm and or reviewer.
But and they also, maybe the coolest thing they have is they have a robot. So the rotor blades on the engines get damaged. I guess like if a bird flies in there or whatever. So they've got a robot that you can mount to the engine, and then a remote party can go in and fix it.
So literally, we're getting astromech droids on our airplanes.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got a guy making $12 an hour mounting it, and a guy making $100 an hour fixing planes all over the world.
So there's going to be an Indian call center filled with airplane repair people.
Okay, exactly. Yeah.
What a time to be alive!
You can feel so confident getting onto your Cessna that's got a Rolls-Royce engine because it's just been fixed by a guy in Bangladesh.
No offense to anybody in Bangladesh, but
that's just not remote work in my opinion.
yeah.
If you want to get your hands dirty on there,
we would hate it just as much as if it were in Saskatchewan or
way worse,
Egan, Minnesota, or wherever. It's just no.
This story was paywalled. I Googled a different one and not a lot of information. Basically just Zooks. You think that's pronounced Zooks?
It's a self-driving taxi in a Mini Cooper.
Yeah, they've got a self-driving taxi, but the story here, I guess, is nobody's ever heard of these guys, and they're almost ready to roll this out.
I think that's probably vaporware and or a scam.
You think? I don't know. The article I looked at had pictures, but the pictures were not completed cars. They were just like steel frames. So
be on the lookout for that. Maybe it's a hot new stock. I don't know.
If you want to ride around in a Zooks, I think if I were going to do self-driving, right now my faith would be in Waymo. That's who I would want to go with. If I had to choose.
I just don't think that that's the kind of technology you can keep secret. It would be like, a competitor to AMD and Intel coming out of the woodwork that did not previously exist, that nobody had ever heard of, with a new microarchitecture and fabrication facilities, and you can't do something on that scale and keep it secret.
I mean, it seems like it'd be an easy thing to disprove.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they're gonna convince us, but we'll find out. Keep your eye on Zooks.
Washington Post again, talking about killer robots.
I think it's safe to say, I mean, you can't disagree with the headline. Killer robots would be dangerously destabilizing. Can anybody argue the opposite?
But see, we don't need killer robots to have a dangerously destabilizing technological force. We have drones that are the size of a pack of playing cards, and they could totally carry a poison dart or like that gun that the CIA keeps talking about that makes people have heart attacks or whatever. We could just fly a squadron of those to somewhere and make Kim Jong have a heart attack or whatever, and that would be just as dangerously destabilizing as Terminators.
I think the argument here is the arms race. Once anybody has killer robots, then we quickly get to, look at the nuclear arsenal.
Yeah.
We started out with something terrifying, and now we have stuff that we can't even comprehend.
I feel certain that DJI could build killer drones if they really wanted to.
Oh,
They're
absolutely.
Chinese company.
Well, think about the Boston Robotics.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all they got to do is strap guns on them. They're already there with everything else. Or they don't even need guns. I bet they could make a robot with sword arms.
Yeah.
That would just be terrifying and unstoppable. But Musk is he's the best known guy that's part of this. But there's people, a lot of big AI people are chiming in and saying, yes, we agree not to make killer robots.
But we don't even need AI to do that. All of that exists today, right now. Everything in this article that they're freaking out about, we don't need AI to do it. It literally could be done right now today.
But we shouldn't. I agree that we shouldn't. I don't.
So it's okay that we do it without AI because we're already there.
No, I think we should agree not to.
Not to do any of it.
I think robots that kill are always a bad idea.
What about the ones the flying drones that kill with the remote pilots? Seems like those are bad. Those have ended badly in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't see that as. I mean, you can argue that it's sort of like guns. You're never going to put the genie back in the bottle. Are you ever going to put the drone genie back in the bottle?
No.
So you never let him out, and I think that's what they're talking about here. It's a little naive, probably, because somebody's going to do it, but I guess it's a good step to try and stop it. I don't know. The terrifying thing is when you put the AI on the robots, and they might start making decisions, like the Asimov stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, they're going to have a remote kill switch and turn off and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't see that being a real big problem immediately. The bigger problem is that they can just remotely kill people with laser-like precision.
Well, and if you want to take that angle on it, like the biggest problem is the never-ending warmongering.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe when humans stop killing each other, we start worrying about the robots. But
maybe Elon Musk should race to build the AI that protects us from ourselves, and then we end up in one of the Asimovian futures.
Yeah, I don't think Musk should be the one. I think he's a little too arrogant to put the future of humanity in his hands.
He'll mean well, but 3/4 of the population will be exterminated.
And he'll tweet, it's like, well, I apologize, but it wasn't really my fault.
If you thought Thanos was bad, just wait till you see.
Muskos.
AI, I like this next story a lot. AI plus chemistry robots find all the reactions that'll work. So AI looks at a bunch of chemical reactions, and then the machine can actually carry out the ones that it thinks it's going to work to experimentally verify that what it thinks works actually works.
And if it doesn't know what works, it can take all of the different things and put them together and record the reaction. So it can
Self-learn.
It can actually feed it through a variety of, testing apparatus, meters, and so forth, and learn. And so you can just be like, here, AI robot, here's like 5 different chemicals. Go find all the reactions. And it only actually has to do 10% to predict 90%. But if it's not sure, it can test any one of them.
I think this kind of apparatus is going to lead to some really amazing things in materials science, because we're going to need lots of exotic materials to travel through space for things like radiation protection and micrometeorites and all that kind of stuff. And this is exactly the kind of setup that we need to figure out, like, these 4 elements combined in this lattice structure produces something that's as light as aluminum but 10 times stronger than 12 inches of iron.
I suspect it will also have huge implications for the killer robot industry.
Yes.
You're talking. I mean, you think about mustard gas and how much better we can make lethal gases. Because killer robots, they're immune to gas.
They don't care.
So that's a real quick way to wipe out a whole city.
They might not be immune to really high concentrations of chlorine gas, depending on what material they're made out of. But basically, yeah.
Well, they could have they could like just positive pressure to keep a little buffer around themselves.
Yeah.
Either way, they're going to kill, and nothing's going to stop them. So that's the important thing to remember.
Waymo is back in the news.
Also, not to be stopped. Waymo cars.
25,000 miles a day. And you got to keep in mind that Waymo, they're not just driving 25,000 miles, they're gathering data at a rate of 25,000 miles a day. So they're learning from the 25,000 miles that they drive, which is the really important. Like the Google pilot cars that they were doing were not just to pilot cars, it was to actually build the data model, which is what teaches them how to drive. So this is a big deal.
They did hundreds of thousands of miles in simulation,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're on the road. Yeah, like I said before, I think Waymo is they're the leader of the pack here.
If you don't see a company doing this kind of thing, how would they have the technology?
Yeah, and Google can certainly afford it. They're doing it the right way. They're doing the Amazon plan where it's like just burn tons of money and figure out what works the best, and then we will conquer everyone.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably see those earlier than a lot of people expect. Well, we've made it to nonsense.
Our first nonsense story. I was really excited because I thought this might be the tomb of Alexander the Great. It was not.
Well, if you've been following, though, the dark sarcophagus, as it's been shown, they opened it up to find out what was inside. And let me take a look here.
It was a new sarcophagus found in Egypt. They thought maybe it might contain Alexander the Great. It contains a family, we don't know who yet, and rust water.
Sewage, actually.
Or sewage, okay.
Yeah, they believe that it's sewage, but people have decided that drinking the dark sarcophagus water will probably imbue them with powers beyond imagination.
Oh, we've all seen The Mummy, right?
Exactly, yeah. So there's a change.org petition to allow someone to drink the red liquid from the dark sarcophagus. I don't disagree. I think we should find out. This
is why they're going to blow up our planet to build a highway.
But yeah, the authorities or the people working on this project believe that because of the location of the dark sarcophagus, this is probably just sewage drain off. So it's probably human waste.
Fox News also has a very delightful story.
This is not much to do with technology, but I just couldn't resist.
The headline is, Millennials are outraged after baseball team advertises Millennial Night with avocados, participation ribbons, and napping stations.
Napping stations. The name of this baseball team, the Montgomery Biscuits. That's the greatest baseball team name I've ever seen. The Montgomery Biscuits.
Go Fighting Biscuits.
Yeah, so this, it kind of worked. I mean, it got them on Fox News, right? But
people were outraged.
The millennials were not happy about it.
We don't need napping stations.
I think it's hilarious that the millennials, they've got this horrible, and I think they deserve it. We've definitely seen some millennial behavior.
There come the downvotes.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's all the millennials, but those of you, the good millennials, need to do more to curb the bad millennials.
So apparently Scotland Yard is using child spies.
I never thought about it before. Do you think we do?
Maybe. Maybe we use old people genetically altered to be like perpetual children. Like they just
like what was Webster? Or no,
some people that never hit puberty because the hormone thing doesn't happen.
What was that guy's name? The actor.
Benjamin Button?
No, the actor that
I can't remember.
What you talking about, Willis?
Oh, yeah, that guy. I can't remember his name either.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with the story. The story has to do with apparently they do from time to time use children as spies. And so the reason this got stirred up is they were actually looking to relax the laws about using children as spies. Apparently you have to renew your child spy license once a month, but they wanted to do it once every 4 months. So
what is going on?
A lot of people weighed in on this. Theresa May, you would think that she would be like, this is abhorrent and we should stop. But her quote was like, we only do this when we absolutely have to. What are the guidelines where it's like, all right, we've exhausted all the other options?
Are the children aware that they've been spies?
Bring on the child spies.
Have they been programmed? I mean, Children of the Corn was a documentary. It was not.
Well, how about the Varys' spies from Game of Thrones?
Oh, yeah.
And where they're stabbing that guy? And that's a terrifying scene.
Children, so that's apparently happening over there in Europe. What is wrong?
Children are terrifying.
I watched the video for this. This is amazing. The headline is the $440,000 suit lets you fly like Iron Man. And you totally can.
It totally works. It's expensive, but I put this in nonsense because it works for 3 minutes.
But you can get to 12,000 feet in 3 minutes.
Can you get back down?
No.
It consumes 4 liters of fuel per minute.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. It is a cool video. And that guy claims that it doesn't build up heat inside of it. And it's extremely comfortable. It doesn't put like pressure on your joints or whatever.
Huh.
So
that seems difficult because it looks like all the lift is coming from his arms and not his legs.
It's the jetpack. The arms are basically just maneuvering.
Okay. So,
yeah. There's not just one of them. You can buy one and get it made, because it needs to be like fitted to you. But
what happens if you bend your knees and get your feet in the jet stream? Does it just vaporize your foot?
I think the suit itself is made of some heat resistant
flame retardant material.
Yeah, but nothing good's going to happen, I'm sure. I don't know what, but I wouldn't want to find out. It also might be that the legs are somewhat rigid to keep you from doing something stupid like that.
That's funny. Because if you landed really quickly from 12,000 feet, probably going to have a broken leg or two.
Well, I think the more terrifying thing is what if you get like confused or you get a cramp or something and you end up going up and then pointing yourself down.
Oh, that would be bad.
Yeah.
I wonder if we solved the icing problem.
Well, they've never taken it more than like 12 feet off. Theoretically, you can go to 12,000, but you should never do that for any reason.
Motherboard has a delightful article.
This is mostly about the video. So this guy, we talked about last week. We talked about the Canadian ISPs.
Yeah.
And I think those were the wireless carriers, but it's all the same.
Bell Canada has pissed off somebody so bad that he's just like, I got to fix this with an axe.
So yeah, I think he did this knowing that it was going to be a social media hit, but also he's angry about his service. Now he claims that this modem that you're looking at here, this modem, he set up an appointment and waited for 4 hours for the guy to show up, and they did show up. But they didn't even knock on the door and left the modem on his doorstep.
Wow.
So this was his response, was to show up with an axe and destroy it in front of the support center.
Now, pro customer service tip, if you're in America, don't do this because the police will just shoot you. It's like you've got an axe in the parking lot of Bell Canada. They'll just shoot you.
They totally will. You might get away with a baseball bat. You might just get tased for that. But an edged weapon, forget it.
Things have gotten real bad here in the States. I want to rethink those vacation plans.
This is another story that doesn't have anything to do with technology, but I just couldn't resist it because...
What is the technology of milk? And it's like the FDA is fine. Like, the FDA is looking into this. It's like almond milk is not actually milk. That's a joke that we have made before on this news program. And finally, 20 years later, the FDA is like, oh, there might be something to that.
Well, this guy looked into the actual wording of like what constitutes milk, and he found reference to lactation. And so he was like, well, an almond doesn't lactate, so can it be? Can we have that? And I don't think so. Coconut? Can a coconut lactate? No. So we're maybe getting some new rules where, and the big milk, the milk people lobby is behind this in a big way.
Well, obviously, they've got the monopoly on lactation.
Well, it turns out, though, that milk sales are suffering. We've actually got a huge oversupply of cow milk in this country. So what are you going to do? You go after the almond people. The browsers. It's struggling. It's working. Oh
yeah, we're getting genetically modified fruit. Like, if you don't like genetically modified food, this story is not for you. But I'm kind of excited for it.
It is cool. They talk about peach-flavored strawberries. I'm trying to imagine what kind of world. Peach-flavored strawberries. Tomatoes with no seeds. We're talking about regular strawberries that are just way sweeter.
I would like a strawberry banana strawberry that I can just put into a food processor immediately and have a strawberry banana smoothie.
How about a banana, but when you peel it, just strawberries inside?
Well, as long as I still get the banana flavor, because the banana strawberry flavor is what does it for me.
So anyway, the new ruling here is, this is about CRISPR-Cas9, is that what it's called? And with CRISPR, you can do this kind of crazy stuff. You can edit things like this. It's totally within reality, these examples we're giving you. But the question is, should we? Should we do that? And so the ruling is, if it's something that could be accomplished with centuries of crossbreeding, then yeah, go ahead and CRISPR it right now. That's what they're saying.
Neat.
They brought up red apples, apparently. You couldn't, red apples they were just like little tiny, bitter, nasty things.
Oh, yeah.
Till we crossbred them for decades and got Red Delicious.
I don't know. Well, just the apple master race, I think, is probably the Fuji apples. I guess that's a cross between Granny Smith and Red Delicious, because Red Delicious is honestly kind of bland anymore.
Oh, you've started an apple war.
That's my trick to get engagement.
What's the best apple?
Granny Smith can be good, but a lot of the Granny Smith apples are too bitter. If you get just the right Granny Smith apple, it's good, but
see, according to the old ladies that did the cooking at our church when I was growing up, the old regular ladies who, you can fault them for whatever you want for their religious beliefs, but when it came to cooking, they were unparalleled. They liked a Granny Smith apple and a lot of sugar, because you get that sort of you get it. It's sharp, but it's also really sweet.
You kind of get that with the Fuji apples, because it's got the little bit of bitterness, but it's sweet like Red Delicious. So
Yeah. Well, this is for a pie.
Oh,
It's like if you're making a pie,
we got to caramelize the sugar. That's the real offset for Granny Smith.
maybe we can CRISPR up an apple that caramelizes on its own.
Oh, that would be amazing. It's like sometimes your trees just catch on fire because it's self-caramelizing.
It's got a molten core. Oh, that would be great. Well, how about the moon?
Who owns the moon?
I mean,
If only there were a space lawyer that we could ask.
it's finders keepers, right? It's ours. Why would we even debate
I don't
this?
think space lawyers are a thing. Oh, wait. No.
Space lawyer. If I was that guy, I would be changing my business cards right now and putting this
Certified space lawyer.
put this URL on it. So they came up with the conversation.com sort of came up with this, like, who owns the moon? What are we going to do? And so they talked to a lawyer who probably has the most experience in this kind of thing.
With property law on the moon?
And the way it shakes out is actually there was a treaty back in the 70s that most of the countries signed, at least the ones that might ever get to the moon, that said it was like a common thing for all humanity. But the Western nations have also ruled on things like asteroids and the moon that it's kind of like international waters. Like, it's not yours. You can't settle there, but anything that you can mine from there and bring home, go for it.
There's a lot of really awesome resources we could use from the moon. I mean, hell, some of these asteroids contain enough precious metal to upset the precious metals market here on Earth.
But I wonder, because like with fishing, it's not like mining. You have to set up a facility to mine, especially on the moon. You have to have a pretty permanent base to be able to do anything.
Unless you do it with those robotic cockroaches.
Well, I suppose, but they're going to have to recharge somehow. So, how does it work with oil rigs, oil platforms?
Oh, the oil rig is sovereign soil.
So they have to buy that.
Well, no, I mean, like if you set up the oil rig in the middle of the ocean or whatever, when you set a foot on the, like, just establishing the oil rig gives you...
So it's kind of like a ship.
Yeah. I think.
So,
I don't know. Maybe somebody more familiar with maritime law wants to comment in the things,
But it's going to work kind of like that. So when someone goes to the moon, I guess you do just sort of like stake off your claim. And it's like, this doesn't belong to our country per se, but we're mining, so you can't mess with us.
I didn't think it was possible for me to feel worse, but our next story.
I only include this for your reaction.
Star Trek Discovery, that's the currently running thing. It's not even Star Trek. It's just like space opera.
No, but hang on. I read the synopsis here. They're in an alternate universe?
Yeah, the entire first season was in, spoiler alert, the entire first season was in the mirror universe, like where, like with like goatee Spock and Kirk from the first season, like the whole first, and it was like a surprise guy, because the characters were all like dark and evil and stuff, and it's like, why is this happening? And it's like, well, it turns out that was the mirror universe.
So are they back now?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched anything. I don't even know if season 2's out yet. But
No, they're talking about season 2 starts in 2019, but they're filming it, and that's what's coming up. Spock's going to be in it.
Yeah, probably Zachary Quinto Spock, because the other Spock died.
Yeah.
Literally
Well,
died.
I mean, how could he play? This was prequel, right?
Yeah.
How could he be young Spock?
Yeah, that would be.
There's no amount of makeup that's going to get Leonard Nimoy looking like young Spock.
I'll just do it with CG.
So, did you watch you haven't watched them all?
I watched, I think, all of them but the last episode of the first season of Discovery. I don't think I've seen the last episode.
Wow. So that was the finale. That's supposed to be the good one, right?
Yeah, no, it was garbage.
A lot of people in the comments, when you shit on it, they defend it. So.
It is not Star Trek. It is a perfectly fine sci-fi series, but it is not consistent with the ideals that Gene Roddenberry taught us, like that we should aspire to be a better humanity for the future. That's the main problem that I have with it.
But maybe they're going by Mirror Universe Gene Roddenberry.
That is apparently what has actually happened, which is wrong.
Well, here's something that might also come from the Mirror Universe. It's a sex robot with a family mode.
This is from Fox News. So like the people that make sex robots there's a family mode switch on the sex robot which will tone down its sex robot. But like, I mean, I'm just imagining a household with like a 12 or 13-year-old boy, and this would just like, there's no amount of counseling later in life that would solve that problem.
You know the old trope in movies where like the young boy, the parents are gone somewhere, and he's like rummaging through their stuff, and he comes up with a revolver.
yeah.
But now he's going to find the sex robot.
Yeah. Or if they're sophisticated enough, I mean, why would you need a robotic maid and the sex robot? I mean, it's going to be double duty, so it's going to be all kinds of weird for everybody in that family.
But hopefully, you would have like an attachment that you keep, from the rest of the family, and only attach it when it's time for sexy mode.
Apparently, it's an iPhone app, and like you just go in there and you flip it on, and then it's good to go.
So I suppose this is her. It's kind of disturbing with no hair. But this guy, the son, I think, ran this story originally. But this guy, who is a sex robot enthusiast, I bet they put that on the little tag under his name when he was on the show. How would you like that to be how you were described on TV? Sex robot enthusiast.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But he admitted, he was talking about the family mode, and he said that he does indeed let his children play with it.
Those children are going to need a lot of counseling later in life. A lot of counseling.
Yeah. I would say, as a rule, any non-living object that you have sex with, don't let your children play with it.
Don't even let your children near it.
Don't let them know of its existence. And it's hard to hide something that big, I imagine. So, yeah. And that was almost the most ridiculous story this week. Almost. It was neck and neck. But I feel like this one trumps it.
Jenny McCarthy doesn't know what her Google Home sounds like, assumes it's a ghost.
Now, if you're not hip to Jenny McCarthy, a very attractive young lady who was a Playboy model, and for some reason, MTV decided that she should have a comedy career, which she did for a little while. I don't think she was particularly funny. She was very attractive, and then she got into the anti-vaccination game, and that's kind of what she's famous for now. So she's looked down upon among the more scientific communities of the world.
Apparently having some trouble figuring out her Google Home.
So the Google Home apparently plays a little piano number when you reboot it, or it reboots itself, which is what happened in this scenario. She heard that there happened to be a piano in the room, because she's also very rich, and she assumed that it was ghosts playing the piano, like right off the bat. Like, oh, I heard a piano, there's nobody in the room. She actually checked the security camera, and she was like, yep, it was ghosts. But it was Google Home.
How cool would it be to the person at Google to take that tech support call? It's like,
well, she did not call Google. She went to Twitter, as you do when there's a ghost infestation in your home. Any emergency, you go right to Twitter.
Well, the Twitter sleuths were on it and solved it, I guess.
Yes, because the recording had the actual sound. So she actually, I guess, uploaded the security footage. And somebody was like, that's the Google Home noise. You have a Google, there it is. It's on your desk there.
In other news, you have the Jenny McCarthy sex tape to look forward to when hackers use her home surveillance system to spy on her.
That's true. Yeah.
Should have given yourself away there, Jenny. Sorry. And that's it. That's it for the week. We're done.
You made it.
I'm going to pass out.
An hour on the dot for Friday's show, and that's all you get. And who knows if we'll live another week. I'm starting to feel a little scratch in my throat. I'm very paranoid right now.
Oh, that's not good. That's probably how it's going. We had a lot of content this week. This week the video, the collaboration video that we did with Linus came out. It's like gaming on Linux. You can game on Linux perfectly fine, but we also showed doing it with the virtual machine, and then doing it with Looking Glass, so you don't have to have a second keyboard, monitor, and mouse. And we got some of our own content on the Linux channel, and this is a busy week for content.
And a busy week for news, but now it's over. And we can go and incubate.
Yeah, probably more content coming this weekend too. Jeez. All right. Thank you guys. See ya. Join our Patreon because more stuff like this. All right.
Also, I don't know if some of you complainers noticed, but I left the stories up on the screen a lot longer this week. You're welcome.
Oh yeah, he's piloting because I couldn't manage that. I don't have the coordination.
They complain about that constantly. So now, you're welcome. I'll expect your thanks. And, retroactively.